Good evening. I'd like to welcome all of you to this virtual town meeting presentation night. I'm Steve Triffletti, Plymouth Town Moderator. We're coming to you live from PACTV studio on Monday, August 3rd at 6 p.m. And as we started at 6 o'clock, I'm delighted to tell you that we have high town meeting member participation. Last I count was 114 town meeting members. A quorum for a regular town meeting would be 90. And we're enjoying the experience that other towns have had with their virtual town meeting. That is that there tends to be a higher participation of representative town meeting members when we offer the remote participation format. And that was permitted earlier this year from the state legislature when our Plymouth State Representative Matthew Muratori co-sponsored legislation which permits representative town meetings to participate remotely. And this is Plymouth's response to that. We are here this evening. We're going to have a night of presentations, and we're going to have town meeting members participate virtually as we begin to practice for next week's town meeting. And before we get into that, I'd like to just take a moment to introduce and give great thanks to our assistant town moderator, Nicole Manfredi. She's been working tirelessly over the past few months, planning and preparing. And also, on behalf of town meeting, I'd like to offer the condolences from town meeting. Nicole recently lost her father who passed this life. And so Nicole, we certainly all want to offer you our support with respect to that. And again, greatly appreciate all you've been doing. So Nicole, what do you have for our town meeting members this evening?
Thank you, Steve. I just wanted to remind town meeting members that if at any point this evening you have problems with technology, there's a couple of different things you can do. I'm trying to monitor all facets here, and I'm noticing there's some conversation in the chat in Zoom, and that's sort of okay for now. But if you have a real technology issue or something that needs to be addressed, we're going to encourage you to use the vVoter request to speak button. And I have a monitor here behind me. I'm going to be constantly monitoring that request to speak queue, and the moderator will be calling on folks as those requests are, as they come in. So you also, for something that's pressing, you have your help desk number, and that number has been sent by email. We've sent that a hard copy in your packet. So it's fully manned this evening. It will be fully manned tomorrow evening, as well as on town meeting night. So you've got a couple of different ways to reach out to us, but I would encourage you, for something that's pressing, please call the help desk and we can get your issue resolved quickly.
Thank you, Nicole Manfredi. She is Plymouth's Assistant Town Moderator. We are socially distancing in the studio. Nicole and I are here at least more than 6 feet apart. And also we're joined by one other person, Julie Thompson. She's the Executive Director for PACTV, and we want to thank Julie and her entire staff, many of whom are here this evening helping us out with this presentation night. And we couldn't really do it without the support of PACTV and all the other people who have been working so hard to make this evening occur. We wanted to start with a recommendation from Mark Feet, who is the president of OTI. And you may recall they are the electronic voting vendor we have been experiencing for several years now with town meeting. And he has supported several other municipalities, and he suggested that from time to time we have a few practice votes, if you will, to use the vVoter. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with a roll call. And even though we know that 114 people have logged in, we want to do a roll call. So if you look at your vVoter and it says for the roll call, please select 1 and press the green vote button to indicate you're present. And we're going to give you some extended time to do that. But I'm going to ask all of you to now look at your vVoter application and to vote green, 1, yes, that you're present. And later, once we believe that most people have signed in on the roll call, We'll run the precincts as we normally do in a town meeting, and this will give you a sense as to what you're going to see at town meeting. So you can go ahead and do that. And at this time, we're going to begin with the run of the show. And the first presentation this evening is going to be the State of the State report from our legislative delegation. And this year, it is from Plymouth Representative Kathleen LaNatra. Welcome, Kathy.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank the town employees, town moderator, town manager, the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and other boards and committees, town meeting members, and the residents of Plymouth for all that you have done during these challenging times and for giving me this opportunity to speak with you tonight to offer a brief update on what is happening up at the State House. It is my pleasure to serve you on Beacon Hill, and I have been grateful for the cooperation and efforts of the town in our legislative delegation. Today, I have the privilege of speaking on behalf of the entire Plymouth delegation, Senator Susan Moran, Representative Matthew Muratori, and Representative Randy Hunt. It falls to me this year to deliver the delegation's best wishes and appreciation for all your continued passion on behalf of America's hometown. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this year has looked a lot different than prior years. We are entering the final few months of the 191st legislative session. Due to the COVID-19 outbreak, we have yet to pass a budget funding the entirety of the 2021 fiscal year. Currently, we are operating under a 1/12 budget, which was passed to fund the first month of the 21 fiscal year. This is not a new measure. We have used the 1/12 budgets in years past to fund the first month of a fiscal year, while the legislature and the executive branch were finalizing that year's budget. However, we are urging towns to proceed with caution regarding the budget. Due to the difficult times we are in, revenue is falling far short of what is expected in Governor Baker's initial 2021 budget, which could have a significant impact on local aid. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic and the challenges it presented, the legislature passed a bill signed by the governor to make municipal governance easier and more flexible during this crisis. Town budgets, permitting processes, town meetings, town elections were all made more difficult because of the coronavirus. The highlights of this bill include allowing modifications to the local permitting process to make it easier to complete applications online, extending municipal tax deadlines, and allowing municipalities to extend property tax exemptions and deferrals. The bill also allows for a reduced quorum for town meetings and to allow town meetings to be held virtually. It is because of this bill that I am delivering my remarks to you via video rather than in person. The legislature also passed legislation to assist towns and cities who have incurred unexpected costs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Representative Muratori and myself worked hard to secure significant earmarks for the town of Plymouth. We were able to secure $50,000 for virtual technology and expenditures and $30,000 for personal protective equipment directly for the town of Plymouth. We know how vital this protective equipment and virtual technology is to assist the people of Plymouth in their fight against the pandemic, and I welcome the opportunity to work closely with Representative Muratori to deliver this relief to the town. The Department of Transportation recently released their Chapter 90 apportionments for fiscal year 2021. We were able to maintain level funding from fiscal year 2020, which was a minor victory given the difficult financial circumstances every level of government must now address. Plymouth will receive $1,576,533 in Chapter 90 funding for the coming fiscal year, and we know it will be put to good use. In an effort to promote public safety and increase business, the Baker administration created the Shared Streets and Space Grant Program. We are happy to announce that Plymouth received $172,727.50 through that grant program. The grant will cover the costs incurred while creating downtown Plymouth into a one-way street in an effort to increase foot traffic and to make the street more conducive to pedestrian traffic. This is an excellent step in ensuring that our local and small businesses downtown are able to continue to thrive during this difficult time. The legislature is working to finalize a bill which will finance governmental infrastructure through the Commonwealth. The bill is currently in a conference committee made up of 3 members of the Senate and 3 members of the House. As of right now, the bill includes an earmark of $200,000 for Plymouth Fire Department to replace fire communication tower within the town. My colleagues and I will do everything we can to ensure that this funding remains in the bill. Throughout the COVID-19 crisis, the Baker administration has been diligently working to reduce food insecurity through the Commonwealth. While this has been a serious issue for a long time, it was heightened when the COVID-19 pandemic hit. In an effort to curb food security, the Baker administration created the Food Security Infrastructure Grant Program. On July 22nd, Map Academy Charter School received $122,664 to purchase 3 vans to help provide meals to students and families. At the end of the last year, Plymouth was awarded a $3 million grant for major repairs to the seawall at the entrance to Plymouth Long Beach. The money will be used to fix the seawall between the entrance guard shack and Sandy's shack, where the wall has been in disrepair for some time. The grant also includes $37,500 for repairs at the Jenny Pond Dam. My colleagues and I are thrilled to see this money go to such a crucial project. Not only will this protect the safety of our beachgoers and provide a more stable entrance and parking area, but it helps Plymouth increase their coastal resiliency against the effects of climate change. We are still waiting on the release of the Chapter 70 funds for fiscal year 2021. Last year, the legislature passed the Student Opportunity Act, which rewrote the formula for Chapter 70 funding. I will continue to work with the legislative delegation to ensure that the town of Plymouth gets its fair share of funding. I know a lot of families are concerned with our children going back to school in the fall. As a parent, I feel and I share those concerns. Right now, every community is developing 3 plans for the coming school year. One plan involves bringing children back to school in person. One plan involves remote learning, and the last plan involves a mix of remote learning and personal learning. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is working hard to produce additional guidance to assist school districts, and further details are expected in August. This is a lot still up in the air, and DESE is working hard to make sure that the students remain safe. One other major issue that I've been dealing with since my first day in office is one that Plymouth has been dealing with for decades: the closure and the decommissioning of the Pilgrim nuclear power plant. Earlier this year, Attorney General Maura Healey and the Baker administration filed a petition and 2 lawsuits against Holtec decommissioning. There were serious concerns over the inadequate financial assurances necessary to complete the decommissioning, the management of the spent fuel on site, and Holtec's use of trust fund paid for mostly by Massachusetts electricity ratepayers. Last month, Attorney General Healey reached a settlement with Holtec to protect Plymouth and the Commonwealth from many concerns over health, safety, and financial liabilities. Holtec must maintain $193 million in funds until the cleanup is finished, and $38.4 million in funds until all spent nuclear fuel is removed from the plant. The agreement requires Holtec to comply with the state's strict cleanup standards. Holtec will have to submit a site assessment to Mass DEP and DPH regarding contamination at the site. Mass DEP and DPH will oversee cleanup to ensure the public health and environment are protected. The agreement includes emergency preparedness requirements and ensures MEMA will receive continued funding to perform its emergency preparedness functions. This agreement is a positive step to ensuring that Holtec responsibly decommissions the Pilgrim Power Plant, but continued vigilance is required by all of us to ensure the health and safety of all residents. This year has been so much different than the past. Our lives have been disrupted and roiled by a worldwide pandemic, and the future remains uncertain. We are facing incredible health, safety, and financial risks rarely seen before. However, this is the United States of America, and this is America's hometown. We have faced crisis before and become stronger and more resilient. I have no doubt that this town and this country will rise to the challenge before us, and I will be there, along with the rest of the delegation, to join in the battle, provide support, and be a resource whenever and wherever necessary. You have given us the honor and the privilege of representing you on Beacon Hill, and we are with you now more than ever. Thank you for all you do for the town of Plymouth and our country, and thank you for trusting us to serve you. Please stay safe, and may God bless the town of Plymouth and the United States of America.
Thank you. That was Kathleen LaNatra. She is a Plymouth State Representative. Today, Kathy was in touch with me. She taped this a couple days ago, and she wanted to provide us with an update with the latest information regarding state funding for municipalities. The Massachusetts State Legislature has committed to provide level funding for unrestricted general government aid, as well as level funding for Chapter 70 funds, with many towns receiving increases from Chapter 70 funding from fiscal year 2020. This commitment provides the towns of the Commonwealth far more certainty regarding their local budgets and is a huge win for all municipalities given the financial circumstances in which we find ourselves. The Town of Plymouth will receive $1,196,864 in unrestricted general government aid. Plymouth will also receive $26,369,547 in Chapter 70 funding, which is $732,123 increase over last year, and talks of local aid reductions of 10 to 20% had Representative LaNatra concern for the communities that she serves, so she's thrilled to be able to provide our Plymouth Town Meeting with this exciting news. Again, thank you to Plymouth Representative Kathleen LaNatra and to the entire Plymouth legislative delegation. And this evening, again, a reminder, Assistant Town Moderator Nicole Manfredi will be fielding questions that you may have. As she mentioned, you can contact the help desk. She just sent out another email reminding people that the original V-voter instructions are the ones you should follow. And just a few moments ago, I understand we're now up to 123 town meeting members who are participating. We have a total of 135, and we had over 92 roll in on the roll call. We're going to wait a little bit longer before we actually do the roll call. I also want to remind town meeting members that this is now the time to submit motions that you may have. Tomorrow night will be a town meeting preview, and we will preview the main motions from the Advisory and Finance Committee. And in addition, I will also preview any motions to amend that I've received, approved, and accepted from town meeting members. So if you have any, please get them to me, ideally tomorrow, so that I can preview some of them for all town meeting members tomorrow evening. At this time, we're going to continue with our presentations, and we're welcoming the chair of the Select Board for the Town of Plymouth, Kenneth Tavares. Welcome, Ken.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, elected and appointed officials, and residents of Plymouth. It is most appropriate to begin this evening with a thank you. Thank you to our first responders and to all of our town employees and management. I would also like to thank our new first responders, those working the front lines at our convenient and grocery stores, restaurants, and all of the other employees working in our local essential services. I'd like to extend a special heartfelt thanks to our public school teachers and administrators who have had to rewrite the book on educating our children over such a short period of time, and who now face a significant challenge in the weeks and months ahead preparing for the new school year. I would be remiss if we did not also extend a thank you from the town for all of our new normal first responders. That includes those members of our community who have made masks for others, donated to our local charities and hospital, who have helped the neighbor down the street get groceries or mow their lawn. We all strive to do our part, and I thank you for that. We socially distance ourselves from others, and we enter public spaces wearing face coverings, not because it is what we prefer to do, but because it is the thing to do for our neighbors and loved ones. A year ago, we never would have envisioned a town meeting held in August under such challenging times and in this fashion. Throughout the past several months, we have seen the shining moments of our town, and we have seen what lies in the shadows. We will find the common ground between our differences. As Plymouthians, we have always done this by listening to each other and accepting that there are different points of view. We then collaborate for the greater good of the town. This formula has been the way that the seaside community has persevered and able to flourish for 400 years. Right now, our world, our country, our Commonwealth, and yes, even our town are all under restraints never before imagined. Indeed, as we have seen throughout the world and our town, every generation is being called upon to come together to assist those in need who are unable to provide for themselves. This body is called to order to discuss and provide the necessary financing to fulfill our government responsibilities and services for the new fiscal year. Demands are high, available dollars are limited. We are all under tremendous pressure to be fiscally responsible and to not detrimentally impair the lives of the wide range of generations that make up our town citizens.
All panelists.
Town meeting has successfully navigated the prior centuries with steadfastness, courage, and commitment to assist all. We all look to brighter days ahead. Alone, this task may seem impossible, but together we shall succeed in continuing our mission of stewarding the town to a future that is prosperous, inclusive, and secure for our current and future generations. We celebrate our Plymouth's 400 years of history, knowing that those before us rose to their challenges, overcame them, and prevailed together. This town laid the cornerstone of our nation. Once again, we will not shirk from our principles and our responsibilities that come with being the oldest community in the nation. May God continue to bless this great town of Plymouth. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you to Kenneth Tavares. He is chair of the Select Board for the Town of Plymouth, and Ken is joining us this evening as a panelist. Earlier, when I talked about the number of participants, it included town meeting members and panelists. For those of you that may have questions on certain articles, I want to just introduce tonight's panelists. They are Melissa Arrighi, Lynn Barrett, Ed Bradley, Lee Hartman, Jonathan Beater, Marlene McCollum. Dr. Gary Maestas is with us now. He will be leaving for a school committee meeting, but will be joined by Gary Costin on behalf of the schools, Kevin Canty, Harry Helm, Roz Jones, Dory Stoley, Dennis Wood, Peter Gordon, Bill Cohan, Holly States, Jeanette White, and David Gould. They are all joining us as panelists, and they are available this evening. If we have any questions that can't be answered this evening, we'll endeavor to research them and provide answers tomorrow evening. And at this time, we're now going to go to the Plymouth Public Schools, and we're delighted to introduce the new chair of the Plymouth School Committee, Kim Savery. Welcome, Kim.
Hello, town meeting members and residents of Plymouth. I'm Kim Savery. I am very honored to have the opportunity to speak to you all today, although virtually and not in person. Having just taken on the role of chairperson, I am looking forward to the year ahead. 1 year ago, none of us imagined that we would be where we are today. We had a strong start to the school year, celebrating many accomplishments. Shortly after 2020 began, we were faced with a challenge we never anticipated. One thing we have learned throughout all of this is that we are able to adapt, be more flexible, creative, and resilient than we ever thought possible. During this challenging time, our administrative team, teachers, and support staff have all worked tirelessly and changed gears in a moment's notice in order to give our students every opportunity for success in this uncharted territory. They have been working hard all spring and summer to redefine the face of education for our students. We have been preparing for every scenario that we will have to face. We are working to make all the accommodations and changes necessary and will continue to try to address all your questions and concerns. Let's face it, this is not easy. We will work with the community to determine what is needed and make our families comfortable with whatever decision we make together. We will ensure everything is in place to keep students safe, happy, and thriving while in our care. As we head into the new school year, we have a lot of challenges. We are building a new administrative team, and we are creating our new updated strategic plan, which will guide us through the next few years. We have many unknowns facing us, such as direction from the state and what assistance we will receive to make all of these accommodations, which we so desperately need. I will make this one pledge to you. We will communicate with the community as information comes available and be as transparent as possible. One thing that we cannot stress enough is where you can get accurate information on what is going on. Plymouth Public Schools has a very informative website and is active on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want information, please go to these sources instead of some of the other forums that are out there. If you cannot get the information you are looking for, please reach out to the schools or school committee, and we will try our best to answer your questions and concerns. Thank you so much for your continued support. Plymouth Public Schools is very lucky to have such a great community behind us. With that being said, I'm proud to turn it over to our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Gary Maestas.
Good afternoon, town meeting members and members of the Plymouth community. Over the past 12 years, I have had the distinct pleasure of serving in the capacity of Superintendent of the Plymouth Public Schools. During that time, I have worked with many of you to ensure that the school department was prepared for the challenges of educating the children of this great community. I am thankful for your support over the years. A few months ago, I announced that I would be retiring from my position of superintendent effective November 2020. As part of the transition process, the school committee went through an exhaustive search to find my replacement. Today, I am pleased to introduce to you the next superintendent of the Plymouth Schools, Dr. Christopher Campbell.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Campbell, and I will be assuming the role of Superintendent of Schools this November. While I am new to the superintendency, I am not new to our school district or this great community. In addition to having the honor of serving as Assistant Superintendent of the Plymouth Public Schools for the last 12 years, I have also been a Plymouth resident for the past 21 years. My wife and I moved to Plymouth because it has so much to offer its residents. In addition to a great education system, we were always impressed with Plymouth's beautiful waterfront and the quality of community services. Plymouth is a large town with a small town feel, and there is no place I'd rather be. I am proud to serve this community as superintendent. I care deeply about this community and its overall well-being. As a school administrator and parent of 3 children in this school system, I have always appreciated the tremendous support this governing body has shown our district. Our students have benefited greatly from our town meeting members' support. Having said that, as we come before town meeting and advocate for our essential needs, we are obligated to consider the economic climate and present a plan that is both responsive to our students' needs and responsible to this community. I promise you that we will continue to be very transparent with our fiscal practices and do our very best to find creative solutions to support the greater Plymouth community. This community and our entire nation has faced great challenges and uncertainty. We have very challenging times ahead, and we must continue to work together to find creative solutions. Communities can be the saving grace in a nation afflicted with hardship. I believe strongly that locally is where leaders in all sectors can make the most difference. It's where we need to concentrate our best thinking and our best efforts. The collective goodwill of this community has been inspiring throughout this pandemic. I have no doubt that we will come out stronger than ever in the end if we continue to work together. In the coming weeks and months, I will be working on my transition to the superintendency. As part of this transition, I intend on conducting a listening and learning tour across this community. Given the amount of change present in our district, a thoughtful and thorough entry plan will ensure that the transition to a new superintendent will sustain the momentum of the district while providing a strong vision and direction for the schools well into the future. It is incumbent upon me to take the necessary time to learn more about the system and our community as a whole in order to be a successful leader for the Plymouth Public Schools. As part of this process, I will be interviewing students, staff, parents, and community stakeholders. During the next few months, my main role will be to listen, observe, learn, be present, and ask questions. I welcome the opportunity to meet with you and gain your perspective as town meeting members. I will be communicating more about this process in the near future. I wish you all a very successful town meeting and look forward to getting to know each of you in the coming years. Thank you for your service to our community.
And we want to thank Kim Savery, Chair of the Plymouth School Committee, Dr. Gary Maestas, Superintendent, and Dr. Christopher Campbell, incoming Superintendent for Plymouth Public Schools. At this time, we're going to return back to our V-Voter. And at the outset, we asked town meeting members to log in and to vote that they are present. And so I understand that we have a total of 123 people participating. 108 attendees are town meeting members, and they have voted. You'll see on the screen that we're going to be showing that we're going to be scrolling from the various precincts. We're working with OTI, and they are OTI Technologies, and they are our electronic voting vendor. And for town meeting members, this is going to be the way in which you'll be voting throughout town meeting. This is coming to you live on Monday, August 3rd. Town meeting members will also have an opportunity as we go through presentations to be able to request to speak, to ask a question. And as we come to the various articles, we will have an opportunity for people who want to ask a question. I did receive a few questions in advance by email. That's always a good practice for people who might be interrupted. And you're going to get a minute on town meeting to vote, but obviously tonight we're taking longer. We'll do that again tomorrow night in order to provide people with ample opportunity to become comfortable. And now you see the screen. So in precinct 1, we see we have 3 people. In precinct 2, we have more. Precinct 3, you'll see again, they're all shown by a P on your screen. And this is how your votes are going to also be shown. Precincts 4, 5, and 6 are now being shown on the roll call for people who have logged in and who have decided to join us. Precincts 7, 8, and 9, once again, have voted. Now, that's not to say that everyone who's participating, there are more people participating than those who have decided to participate in the roll call. But again, precincts 10, 11, and 12 are shown here. And finally, precincts, we're going to go to the last 3 precincts, 13, 14, and 15. And so town meeting members, you may have seen that you weren't shown here. And so we'll work on that. We're going to do another test vote. And the next test vote, again, none of these are binding on town meeting members. It's a practice, but with the plans for next week would be to have an additional adjourned session for Thursday, August 13 at 6 p.m. And it will be in the event we can't finish all of our business. So you'll see now that town meeting members, again, this is a survey. This is not a binding vote. We're just going to survey town meeting members, and town meeting members can vote 1 yes, 2 no, 3 abstain, and it'll be shown here. And again, Nicole, anything you want to add on the voting? I think that the voting, when they vote, will help them know how they voted. Is that right?
Yes, I'm just noticing that there's a discrepancy between attendees and the voting numbers, and I'm just wondering, I've lost my feed for vVoter. I'm for Zoom. I'm just logging back in. I want to make sure that folks, I'm not getting any calls, so I know everybody's able to access. So I just want to make sure that they know that it's important to vote, just even though it's just a housekeeping issue, it's important for us to see those votes and know that everybody is able to access the platform.
Yes, it certainly appeared when we went through the various precincts that we may not have had all of them. But we're doing this tonight and again tomorrow night in an effort to try to practice and work out any glitches that may have arisen in working through with the Zoom webinar platform and the OTI voter platform. And so we'll hear more about that momentarily. But in the meantime, you have in front of you, town meeting members, another vote to vote for the adjourned session for Thursday, August 13 at 6 p.m. We're going to be in touch with Mark Feet from vVoter, and we'll get back to you with an update. In the meantime, we're going to continue now, much as we would do on the night of town meeting. By the way, we're already showing a vote for the adjourned session. Again, I don't know if everyone has voted, but you'll see 67 voted yes. We have 18 noes, 4 people have abstained. So again, we're going to scroll through the precincts one more time on that motion for an adjourned session. And you'll see here in precincts 1, 2, and 3, the green are yes. We have a no, we have an abstention. So people are trying out how to vote. And this is, again, really a survey on whether or not people are going to be in favor of having a second adjourned session next week. We have precincts 4, 5, and 6, again, voting. The majority voted yes, 7, 8, and 9. And this will be an opportunity for town meeting members to look at the voting, see if for some reason, I see one town meeting member that I know is participating this evening. So again, we'll all have to check and then figure out why, if they were trying to vote, why the vote may not have been recorded. But certainly the majority of town meeting members have been recorded. We're now at precincts 13, 14, and 15. And we'll come back a little bit later with another practice vote as the people here on the technology side work through what we need to do in order to make sure that everyone's vote is counted. We're going to continue now with the consent articles. And at town meeting, one of the first things that we're going to do is take a vote as to whether or not to have consent articles. And although at the night of town meeting, we're going to begin with the vote as to whether or not to have a virtual town meeting in the annual, and then whether or not to have consent articles in the annual this evening, we're going to proceed as we would on the night of town meeting with the debate and deliberation. And that would be to recess from the annual to go in to the special. And then as we begin with the special, we would begin with the consent articles. And actually, what we would be doing is, if the procedural motion passes, we would not be having any further discussion on the consent articles. And in the special, for those of you who've been watching, you'll know that the consent articles were the town's effort to pare down the warrant for town meeting. This is done in many other municipalities. It's a way in which to try to save time. So rather than voting on each and every article, we took articles that usually are unanimous and usually are without debate. And we bundled them together. They're consolidated so that we would have one vote. So for the presentation night, the first one, Article 12 in the special town meeting, was part of the consent article, and that was on rescinding unused borrowing. And Lynn Barrett is here, if necessary, to answer any questions. You could use your vVoter application if you wanted to ask a question. And I do see that I have a motion to amend on the vVoter from a town meeting member. I'm aware of that motion, and I will review that with the town meeting member tomorrow, since tonight we're going to presentations and question and answer. The second article in the consent agenda for a special town meeting is Article 13, and that is, again, on Environmental Affairs Fund, and there's no expiration for that. The town manager is available to answer questions. And finally, Article 14 in the special town meeting warrant is for easements over Carver Road. So you'll be invited to have one vote on whether or not to approve all of these. And at this time, I'm going to move to the remainder of the articles on the special town meeting warrant. And the first one is Article 1, and that has to do with salary increases. And we're going to go to the Plymouth Town Manager, Melissa Arrighi, who is joining us this evening, both as a panelist, and you'll see her now on video. Welcome, Melissa.
Article 1A of the special town meeting warrant asks you to approve amendments to a collective bargaining agreement with OPEIU. OPEIU, commonly known as OPE, is made up of about 102 town employees who serve in roles that span mostly the mid-level and upper management range. As an example, these union positions are the town clerk, director of assessing, the airport manager, veterans agent, town engineer. Through most of our information technology folks, the payroll personnel, the budget analyst. Management met with the union team to negotiate new language and contractual changes, including any monetary raises to their salaries. And this is for the contract dated July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2021. So the end of next summer. This article requests your approval of those negotiated language changes and a financial appropriation of the necessary funding to pay for them. Predominantly, the changes include an annual 2% cost of living adjustment, an additional day off to be used before the end of this contract, June 30th, 2021. It also includes a fairly large increase in the annual longevity pay for employees who have served 5, 10, 15, or 20 years to the town. For example, the payment to the employee who completes their 15 years with the town receives $900 a year every year after that. This was formerly only $250 a year. If you work for the town in this union and you complete 20 years of service, your annual longevity jumps from that $900 a year to $1,200 until you leave your employment. In negotiations, the union placed quite a bit of importance on financial benefits to those who stay with the town. The first question I receive about any negotiated employment contract is, how much will it cost? This 3-year contract with the union OPEIU, setting aside any quantifiable value to the additional day off, this package will cost approximately $1.3 million over a 3-year period for the 102 employees. The details of the changes are on page 28 of your report and recommendation book, and the cost breakdown is on page 27. And that is Article 1A.
Thank you. Melissa Arrighi, our Plymouth Town Manager, and she reminds me that we do have lots of materials that we want you to look at. This is the report and recommendations from the Advisory and Finance Committee. It says spring special town meeting, but of course, we're now in the summer. We also have the report and recommendations of the Advisory and Finance Committee, again, for the spring annual. So the special and the annual. A lot of town meeting members have asked me, what's the difference between articles and motions? Again, reminder, the selectmen set the warrant, they select the articles, we determine the scope of the debate based on the article in the warrant, but then we have motions. And so the motions are what we're going to be following tomorrow night. This is a motions packet that was sent to you through the mail, along with a supplement to the recommendations from the Advisory and Finance Committee. So we encourage you to look at all these documents. We also have the general government proposed operating budget, and for the Plymouth Public Schools, a fiscal year 2021 budget book. So these are all helpful. Now, I'm being told that a number of town meeting members are using the chat function for the Zoom webinar platform. We want to remind you that just as we don't want you watching PACTV tonight because there's a delay in what you'd see on TV as compared to what you're going to see in the Zoom webinar, so too, we're not going to be responding to the chat function. So again, if you have technology questions, you should call the help desk. You all have the number. Please call the help desk. We have many people who are trained and experienced to answer your technical questions. If you want to make a motion, then I ask you to email the motion to me, and we will review it in preparation for tomorrow night's preview. Now, finally, if you have a question that you want to ask a presenter this evening, this would be the time to use your vVoter application to ask a question. So we just heard a presentation from our town manager, Melissa Arrighi. And if there's someone who wishes to ask her a question, you could ask her a question now on Article 1, and that was 1A. And now we're going to continue, if there are no questions on 1A, with, again, the town manager, Melissa Arrighi. Welcome back.
So for Article 1B of the special town meeting warrant, I think it would be really helpful if you turn to page 30. Page 30 is in this red report and recommendation book that you're working with for the special town meeting. This article asks you to approve amendments to the collective bargaining agreement with the Superior Officers Association. Now, if you know what the superior officers are, they're the 21 sergeants and lieutenants on your police department. Years ago, in the last contract, these employees had, the town had negotiated what's called an economic wage reopener. In the simplest terms, it just means that management agreed with these employees that they could request to reopen their contract once the classification and compensation study was complete. That was a study that town meeting authorized some years ago to look at all employees, town and school, look at our salaries and our benefits, and see where they fell in comparison to other towns, and in terms of internal equity. When the study was complete, this group, the sergeants and lieutenants, did indeed ask to sit down with that economic wage reopener and talk about their compensation. They were seeking a wage adjustment. Now, management met with the union team. However, we weren't able to reach any sort of agreement. And when you belong to a police or fire union, unlike other town and school employees, those unions have the ability to file with the state. It's called the Joint Labor Management Committee, known as the JLMC. This entity will hear both sides talk about what they are seeking, and they'll render a decision. It's called an award, and management then brings that to town meeting. That's what you're looking at in your report and recommendation book. And in this particular JLMC award or determination, they awarded a 3.5% cost of living adjustment for all the sergeants and lieutenants, retroactive back to 2017, and then no health insurance changes. You can see that summary on page 55 of the report and recommendation book, and this article requests your approval of that state award, as well as appropriation of any necessary funding to pay for them. Now, I'm going to go on a little bit longer because this 3.5% raise retro to 2017 is a little more difficult to put into an exact cost because that retroactive payment then changes all the other payroll benefits moving forward. So please see the chart on page 27 of your report and recommendation book. Immediately after the state sent this decision to the town, the management team and the superior officers sat down again to negotiate the current contract, the one you're really dealing with mostly with the other groups at this town meeting. That contract runs through June 30, 2021. We quickly reached an agreement, and those changes were the addition of a mental health day, some flexibility with the use of sick time, and the implementation of a drug and alcohol policy. The financial changes were an increase to longevity, an increase in the night shift differential for the sergeants and lieutenants, and an increase in clothing allowance to $1,000 a year, as well as a 2% cost of living adjustment for each year. Those changes you will specifically see in the next article, which is Article 1C of the special town meeting. I present them here in this video together because indeed they are related. You need to understand how the retro award in Article 1B affects the changes we make in Article 1C. This can be a little bit confusing, so if you have any questions, please reach out to me or the finance director or the human resources director anytime before town meeting.
Thank you, Town Manager Melissa Arrighi. This is a town meeting presentation. It's coming to you live on Monday, August 3rd. We begin at 6 o'clock, and we will continue with our town meeting members. We're in the special town meeting warrant, but before we continue with more presentations from our town manager, we're going to go to our assistant moderator, Nicole Manfredi. She's going to give us an update as to some of the technology fixes that we've experienced this evening. Nicole.
So We've received a few phone calls from the help desk from folks that have stated they've voted and they're not seeing their vote appear in the tally scroll. And so I checked in with the folks at OTI, and that's actually an error on our end, and this is a learning experience for everyone. In an effort to give you lots of time to vote, we've been leaving that vote open for a long time. We've been letting you listen to panelists and listen to presentations, all the while giving you that opportunity to do your voting. Apparently, there's a 5-minute cap on leaving that vote open. So when that happens and we go over that time, the voting is reset, and that's why some of your votes weren't showing. So now we know. So going forward, Steve's going to initiate he's going to do the call to vote. You'll have we'll give you 2-3 minutes, plenty of time to get your vote in, but we can't just let it run through a presentation, because if we do that, then the voting will be reset. So all is well. We have records of your votes. None of them are binding or of any substance. This is just a practice run, but I want you to know that it's been resolved, and going forward, you'll see a little bit of a difference in how the moderator calls for the vote, but you'll still have plenty of time to get that vote in.
Thank you, Nicole Manfredi, our Assistant Town Moderator. We're going to continue with the Plymouth Town Manager and complete the special town meeting warrant, Article 1. We're going to go to Article 1D, and once we finish, then we're going to take another practice vote or survey, if you will. But again, welcome back, Melissa.
Now you're looking at Article 1D. Again, I'm always going to ask you to refer to your spring special town meeting book. Article 1D asks you to approve amendments to the collective bargaining agreement with the Patrolmen's Union. These are about 104 patrolmen in the town, all members of the union. And as I've stated in the past, sometimes when management is negotiating with the unions, the sides are just too far apart on issues to reach an agreement. More often than not, it's about salaries and raises. Management typically wants to make some changes, like to health insurance, to offset increases in the salary package, and understandably, the unions resist that. Many times, you just keep negotiating, sometimes for years. However, if you are a member of a police or fire union, you can petition the state to hear your position on the issues. That is called the Joint Labor Management Committee. I've referred to it in earlier articles. We call it the JLMC. They review each position of the town and the union on a limited number of issues, and they render an award. With the patrolman, you can see a summary of that award on page 99 of your report and recommendation book. In terms of financial increases, it also provides for a 5.5% retroactive pay back to July 1 of 2018, and then a 2% cost of living adjustment for July 1st of 2019, and then this past July 1st. The most common question I receive about this award from people is, how much will it cost? The 3-year contract for the 104 patrolmen will cost approximately $1.6 million over the 3-year period. The cost breakdown is on page 27 of your report and recommendation book. This article is Article 1E, and that requests town meeting approve changes to the 9 dispatchers employment contract for a 3-year period of time at a cost of approximately $116,000. These changes were successfully negotiated between the union and the management team. The new negotiated 3-year agreement provides for some financial increases for the employee, that 2% annual cost of living adjustment for each year, the addition of a new $1,200 a year stipend for advanced certifications, and some additional pay for the training of other dispatchers. There's also one additional day off to be used prior to June 30th, 2021, and we hope you'll support this article.
Thank you. And again, that's Melissa Arrighi. She is the Plymouth Town Manager. And we've been enjoying presentations this evening at this town meeting presentation night. We're going to again depart from the presentations for a moment, and we're going to go to another practice vote survey. And this is going to be with respect to whether or not to approve the concept of a special town meeting consent agenda. So you'll see the vote here. It says approve the special town meeting, but it's actually going to be a vote as to whether to approve the special town meeting consent agenda. And again, that was to bundle together Articles 12, 13, and 14. And so we're going to take a 1-minute vote in order to see whether or not having it for 1 minute is going to be enough time for everybody to vote yes, no, or abstain on the consent agenda. We're going to start voting now. And town meeting members are voting. For those of you that are watching, this is coming to you live on Monday, August 3rd from PACTV studio here in Plymouth. It is a Plymouth special town meeting presentation. And following this, we have a few people who want to speak. And so I'm going to call on those people after the vote in an effort to try to go through the list of people who've requested it. We're down to 23 seconds on the voting. 20, again, you're voting. Again, it's not binding, it's just a survey as to whether or not town meeting members, at least this evening, approve or endorse the concept of a consent agenda for special town meeting articles 12, 13, and 14. We're down to 1. We've completed the voting, and we now have 69 voting in favor, 13 no, 5 abstentions. So again, town meeting members are getting a sense as to what is the consensus of town meeting on a number of these survey procedural issues that we're checking this evening. And it looks as though, at least for the special town meeting, there is support from town meeting to move forward with a consent agenda bundling together those 3 articles, Articles 12, 13, and 14. You'll see that we're going through the list of town meeting members, and then we're going to go first to John Hammond, who has a point of order, and John did it some time ago, so it may have been resolved. I have a motion that I've received in writing by email, so I'm not going to call on that town meeting member. Another town meeting member canceled her request, so initially she wanted to speak. So we're going to go to John Hammond, and we're going to be followed by Michael Withington and then Betsy Hall. So if we can go to John Hammond, he is a town meeting member, and John is from Precinct 4, and John had a point of order, and so we're going to go to John now, and we're going to listen to John as he gives his point of order to Plymouth Town Meeting. So right now, the people here in the studio are looking to find John Hammond. Again, this is a live presentation on August 3rd of the Plymouth Town Meeting presentations. We have a number to go through. We now have John Hammond. John, welcome.
I wasn't even being provided the opportunity to vote, and of course it wasn't being registered. It was not the V-vote panel wasn't changing to allow me to vote.
Okay.
Thank you, that's all.
So
I actually withdrew it a minute ago. But
So yes, John, your cancel request didn't come through. But again, John, that's a good point, because on the night of town meeting, we're going to be looking carefully at the point of order. I held off because I knew there were some glitches, but before we close the vote, we'll go to that. And as a backup, you can also call the help desk on town meeting and say, I have a point of order. I have an issue with my vote, and I'd like the voting to be delayed until my issue is resolved. So we got both the V-voter point of order, and that can be followed with a call to the help desk. At this time, we're going to go to Michael Withington. He's in Precinct 5, followed by Betsy Hall. She's in Precinct 12. Michael Withington has requested to speak. And so we're going to hear Michael. And in the future, what we're going to do is we're going to be taking these requests as we come to particular articles. So you should be pressing the speaker request as we come to the particular article. We've been in the special town meeting and we've been hearing presentations. And so Michael Withington is in Precinct 5. And if we can call him up And if we can hear from Michael Withington in Precinct 5. This is a town meeting presentation, and it's coming to you live. And here he comes. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Steve, Mr. Moderator. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the town, both civilians and employees, for their continued effort to keep us all pilgrims moving forward. So appreciate all your efforts. So just a question, and I don't know whether to pose this to Lynn Barrett or Melissa or the Finance Committee, but, and I know this is a dynamic time, but roughly can you provide the information on what our revenue shortfalls would be so far this year compared to 2019? And if it was in a dollar and percentage, that would be of assistance. And I know it's a moving target, but I think that it would educate all of the town meeting members as to our revenue shortfall that we're experiencing through no one's fault, just having to adjust financially to the the pandemic. So I'll take my cell, or you can mute me, but I appreciate everyone's extra efforts and energy, and keep Plymouth moving forward.
Thank you. That's Michael Withington, Precinct 5. Michael, if you can bear with us, Lynn Barrett has a presentation on the budget. And so we're going to be hearing that. And then if that doesn't answer your question, Lynn is with us as a panelist, and she can supplement that. I'm going to jump to Betsy Hall. We have a lot of presentations, a lot of speakers. Betsy Hall is in Precinct 12. Betsy, welcome this evening for Plymouth's first virtual all-town meeting member presentation. If we can go to Betsy Hall, Precinct 12. And this is Plymouth Town Meeting. It's a presentation, and she's up. Go ahead, Betsy. Welcome.
She's muted herself.
So, Betsy, you need to unmute yourself so we can hear you. We have muted everyone, but you can unmute yourself when you've been called up to be a speaker.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
Thank you. Like your tie there, Mr. Triffletti.
Thank you.
Nice and bright. Yes, thank you to everyone who is helping this town meeting go forward and help this town go forward. A question that came up in the Precinct 12 caucus, we have read that a number of employees are either furloughed or laid off at this time. Is it possible for us to get a list of the positions that are laid off and are furloughed? And I would like to know if under Article 1, if any of those employees are furloughed or laid off, how will that affect the bottom line for the contract and for the amount of money that town meeting will, if we do vote to pass Article 1 and say there are 5 employees who are not returned to service, then what happens to that money that was budgeted?
Thank you. That was a question from Betsy Hall, Precinct 5. I think this is a good opportunity since she's asking specifically with respect to Article 1 to go back to Town Manager Melissa Arrighi, and Melissa, to see whether or not this evening, now in your role as a panelist, whether or not you can answer a specific question to Betsy Hall. I know certainly the list is not available at this moment, I assume, but we'll get that to town meeting members either tomorrow evening or subsequently. But let's go to our town manager, Melissa Arrighi. She is a panelist, and let's have her zoom in to this presentation live this evening, which is coming to us on August 3rd. Melissa, hello.
Hello. So right now, we do not have any furloughed employees. We do have employees that we laid off predominantly because of a lack of service right now. As everybody knows, we still have the library closed. We cannot open to the public yet. The Board of Selectmen is still discussing that. The senior center is not open to the public, but the employees are in there working. So how it will affect the bottom line with the number of employees that are laid off, and we have done some layoffs for the town. I'll have to get you those figures, but what I will do is I will work with Lynn Barrett in the morning and we'll make that available to you. Now, I will tell you this, if we reopen those buildings, we have every intention of bringing the employees back to service.
Thank you. And that's Melissa Arrighi, Plymouth Town Manager. We're going to be going to Richard Cirque, who's asked to be heard. Richard is with Precinct 2. And this was a good example of what it's going to be like at town meeting. You're going to have somebody speak, make a presentation. You're going to have a question from Betsy Hall. Then you're going to have a response from Melissa Arrighi. So even though we're not all in the same room, we are going to be able to still have debate and deliberation at town meeting. And we're going to work through all of the little things that we need to try to work through tonight and tomorrow night, so that come next Monday, hopefully things will go even more smoothly than they are this evening. At this time, we have a request from another town meeting member, Richard Cirque. He's with Precinct 2. And so we're going to go to Richard on this presentation night that's coming to you live on August 3rd. This is from PACTV. Once we continue, after Mr. Cirque speaks, we're going to be going to Article 2. And Richard Cirque is... Okay, so Richard, go ahead and talk. Are you unmuted? Yeah, actually, I'm not going to go to the town meeting member wants to make a motion to amend. I've already gotten that from him, but we're going to go to Catherine Holmes, and she is with Precinct 8. Catherine Holmes, and if we can call her up.
Hi, Steve. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Welcome, Catherine.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for all of your work putting this together, Steve. I know it's quite a large feat. I have a follow-up question to Melissa regarding the furloughed employees, and you'll get us the list of who was actually laid off. What are the plans, if you could speak to the latest and greatest on the intention of potential further layoffs, or are you done at this point?
So that's a question again for Town Manager Melissa Arrighi, who is one of our panelists, and it's coming from Catherine Holmes, who is a town meeting member in Precinct 8. So if we can go now back to Melissa Arrighi. Melissa, go ahead.
So at this point, we don't have any immediate intentions to lay off any other employees. With the news about level funding, that looks forward to the budget that we are building now, starting in September. We'll start building the FY22 budget. But right now, there are no intentions of further layoffs. Now, I will say, depending on any further changes that could happen, that is always the possibility, but no plans for it right now.
Thank you, Melissa Arrighi, Plymouth Town Manager. We're going to go to Article 2. In the special town meeting, supplementing budgets, we have no motion, no action. Article 3, unpaid bills of a prior year. And we have panelists who could speak to that. We don't have a presentation. Article 4A is an asbestos mitigation plan, and we have a panelist who could answer questions. And Article 4B is the Brook Road Bridge reconstruction. And again, if there are questions, but we now do have a video. Article 4C, the fire communication tower, and at this time we welcome our fire chief, Edward Bradley, and he's going to talk about the fire communication tower. Welcome, Chief Bradley.
I'm Ed Bradley, Fire Chief of the Town of Plymouth. I'm here today to speak to you about special town meeting article number 4, which is a replacement of a communications tower due to the one that was condemned at the Central Fire Station at 114 Sandwich Street. We have had a temporary tower erected at the fire headquarters so that we could dismantle the one that was damaged during the storm. It was original to the building and it was 45 years old. We have located another parcel of land up by the wastewater treatment plant It's a parcel the town already owns. It already has utilities close to it, so it's going to save some costs there. And it got pretty good elevation at 140 feet above sea level compared to the 12 feet above sea level where we are here. We have gotten some insurance money for the damage to the tower at fire headquarters. That came to about $240,000. The total cost to erect the new tower over on the land up by the wastewater treatment plant will be $500,000. And of course, we've got the settlement of $240,000 from the insurance company towards that. This is a key part of the communications for both the police department, the fire department, and our emergency medical services. It's a redundant system where if one side fails, the other can pick up. And recently, we were supplying all the communications for the police due to an issue that they had to replace one of their transmitters on a tower down south. So it is absolutely imperative for public safety personnel to have communications back to their dispatch centers and to all the units in the field. And this tower will help us keep that communication line in perfect condition.
Ed Bradley, we understand that many of you did not see him on video. He actually looked pretty good on video. We could see him here, but many of you were seeing our town manager's name on the screen. So these are the kinds of things that we're going to work on tonight in order to bring you our town meeting next Monday. And at this time, I don't see any request to speak on that. And so we're going to go now to the special town meeting Article 5, and that is the repair analysis for the 4 firehouses. And this includes both Articles 5 and 6, and we're going to go to that now.
Plymouth has 7 fire stations that house the 139 dedicated firefighters who respond to almost 9,000 emergencies a year and hundreds of other public assist calls. The West Plymouth Fire Station was built in 1975, the Bourne Road Fire Station was built in 1977, and Manomet was rebuilt in 1988. The population in 1970 was about 18,000 with over 800 response calls. In 1995, the population was almost 48,000 and had almost 5,000 response calls. Today in 2020, the population is over 63,000 and has almost 9,000 response calls. With early firehouses, firefighters worked 10 and 14-hour shifts. There were no women firefighters. There were no computers. Bathrooms and showers were not conducive to male and female staff. Today, consumer goods are increasingly manufactured using synthetic materials, and fires are more toxic. When firefighters return from a fire, they can be covered in toxic chemicals, and the state mandates they have separate decontamination areas to launder toxic clothing and gear. Gear needs to be stored in separate areas away from the engine floor and living quarters. Our 3 stations currently have the gear stored on the apparatus or engine floor. Today, fire station designs must include systems and plans that will segregate any hazards brought back to the station and keep those from the living area of the station. HVAC systems and other barriers are required to properly protect staff from the day-to-day hazards. Today, firefighters work 24-hour shifts. They don't go home at night when they are on duty and have very limited space for overnight needs and their gear which needs to be ready at a moment's notice. Over the years, the town has made minor facility upgrades to these 1970s stations. These include furniture replacements as needed, flooring was replaced, roofs were patched, windows replaced, worn-out appliances were replaced, curtains were put up to provide some separation for women firefighters. Parking lot potholes were filled, not repaved. Leaks were patched. The Town of Plymouth has kept up to date on the apparatus and outfitting of safety equipment for our firefighters. The actual buildings have not been modified in the last decade. Major renovations to these 3 fire stations are needed to bring these early buildings up to today's standards. The fire station of today serves a much higher purpose. Firefighters work 24-hour shifts, They respond to almost 9,000 emergencies per year. They serve a population over 63,000 and in the summer over 85,000. There are women firefighters. All stations serve as baby safe havens. For well over 40 years, the West Plymouth and Bourne Road Station have served us well, and for over 30 years, so has the rebuilt Manomet Station. Now they are tired, worn, and drastically outdated and in need of major upgrades and significant renovations. These stations are outdated to the point that they are unhealthy for the firefighters that work there. Of primary concern is removing the asbestos materials rather than encapsulating the areas. At the upcoming April town meeting, our leaders will be presented with an opportunity to invest in these stations. The first article seeks $500,000 to pay for professionals to produce design specifications for each of these 3 stations. As those designs are finalized, the second article seeks $3 million to begin the construction work.
Thank you. And we're now going to go to a couple of town meeting members. We're going to try to go back to Richard Cirque. Richard, are you able to unmute yourself now and talk to us? So for those town meeting members that may find that that's a question, you can call the help desk and have the help desk help you through the technology. In addition, people have been emailing the assistant town moderator. We'll come back to Richard Cirque. We're going to go to Paul Cunningham, precinct 8. Paul, welcome.
Mr. Moderator, thank you very much. I'm talking about motion 5. Being a former consultant for 14 years in a different industry, a contract of this type is a big contract and requires one to describe the timetable to complete, the length of time for each site, and detail a lot of deliverables in writing. The estimator or consultant should be an independent firm and not a contractor that did a good job for you, because the firm has a vested interest and a leg up on the competition to perform the job when they're acting as a consultant. I'm concerned about some of the words used in the description of the article, destruction of portions of the existing building, and the use of the word project manager services included in here. And usually that applies only as an overseer of the project itself. So the Station 1 building should not include rebuilding on this site, but only what changes need to be made to allow it to be used temporarily. I think we all agree on that.
So Paul,
Or maybe
Paul,
business office,
Paul,
or trucks only with
Paul,
personnel living elsewhere.
Paul, excuse me.
So,
this is a presentation night. If you have questions and you want to elicit a response from one of the presenters, we can do that. If you want to debate the issue, that's going to be for next Monday. So do you have a question?
No, this is just questions.
What's the question?
What kind of deliverables are we going to get from this consulting survey for $500,000?
And any other questions before we go to the presenters?
No, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. That's Paul Cunningham, Precinct 8. And if we can go, we'll begin with Chief Bradley, who is the Plymouth Fire Chief. And if Chief Bradley, if you want to respond, and if not, you can let us know. We'll go to another panelist. Chief Bradley responding to Paul Cunningham.
Yeah, those type of questions are going to be best answered by the DPW. They're in charge of facilities, or possibly even the town manager who has been through this process a number of times.
Town Manager Melissa Arrighi. Melissa, did you want to respond?
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Cunningham, I think that this provides, well, I know this article would provide us with the funding to be able to go out and look for a company. We have to go out to bid for somebody that can do the schematic design, tell us what the building needs, where's the best bang for our buck, what do we fix first? We know this funding won't let us fix all the buildings at once, so where can we do the best work? But we know we have to go out and search for a company that can do that. They'll put those deliverables right in any contract that I sign. It's the town manager.
Thank you. And that was a question from town meeting member Paul Cunningham, answered by the town manager, Melissa Arrighi. And at this time, we're going to continue with our presentations, and we're going to go to Article 7 to 8 with respect to the funding for the fire station. And again, Chief Bradley would be able to respond to that. And I did receive a question in advance, And I'm going to now ask that question. Laurie Hutchinson, who is Precinct 15, has a two-part question. And she says, with regard to Article 8 and the request for $30 million for a new fire station at 91 Long Pond Road, is the requested appropriation amount intended to also cover the demolition of the fire station that's being moved? And if so, is the plan to use that empty lot in some way, safe way, such as a public space? So again, I'm going to first go to the town manager, Melissa Arrighi, and she has her staff here with her. Melissa.
This article does not include any funds to demo the existing fire headquarters. That is something that would need to have a conversation. And of course, if we build a brand new fire headquarters on Long Pond Road, the existing service headquarters that is there now, we would have to use that right up until the move time. At that point, we'll start to have conversations while we're under construction about what to do. You know, if you look at any of my town manager's report, I've talked about ideally what we would love to see happen at that site is to somehow use portions of that building and make a new entrance into Stevens Field. But that's a decision that the Board of Selectmen would need to weigh in on. And depending on what demo costs are, we would have to come back to town meeting to get your approval for that funding.
Melissa Arrighi is our Plymouth town manager. This is a presentation night, and we're continuing with the presentation and monitoring questions from town meeting members. Next, we have Article 9A, and it has to do with the community preservation funds. We're going to go to Bill Cohen, and he is the chair of the Community Preservation Committee. Welcome, Bill.
Good evening. This is Bill Cohen with the Community Preservation Committee. And tonight I'll be presenting the Community Preservation Committee articles for both the special town meeting and the annual town meeting tonight, Monday, August 3rd, 2020. Again, the articles that I'll present right now are Article 9A, B, C, and D for the special. And as we move through these, I can quickly explain them. Article 9A is a park grant match. The Department of Marine Environmental Affairs was able to secure a grant for $337,270 to do renovations to Jenny Pond. They needed a match. The total project cost is $751,500. The grant that we're receiving from the state brings the total project cost down to $414,230. The CPA fund will be used for that balance of the project, and the funds will be used for improving the park footbridge, the paths, and improving access to the Pilgrim and Native American trails along our town brook. As a result of this expenditure, a conservation restriction of will be placed on 19.09 acres, and I can show you this photo of the Jenny Pond footbridge, built around 1968, 1969. It has been renovated over the years, but as you can see, it's in dire need of repairs. This is some of the lighting that was installed around 1968. Very retro, but it needs to be replaced with modern lighting that is safer for this parking area and improves access on the other end, the far end of this parking lot. There are trails that can take you, that will be built eventually, that will take you around the other side of Jenny Pond and out towards a Huntley Preserve. And this is Jenny Pond itself, which I know the Dave Gould is here tonight to answer any questions about the park grant, but I know Dave is looking into opportunities to improve the water flow to Jenny Pond after this project is completed. And that completes the presentation for Article 9A. Article 9B is Jenny Pond Forest Edition. This is to acquire approximately 4 acres of land next to Jenny Pond. This parcel of land will help connect 2 historical parcels of land, Watson's Hill, which is a historical hill connected to Jenny Pond, and Frawley's Mountain, which is another town-owned piece of land. This will connect 2 pieces of open space along Jenny Pond that are town-owned currently, and will help in our water protection activities along our town brook, and also falling in line with the downtown village master plan for creating more access and more public open space. There's some pictures I can show you of the property. This is Frawley's Mountain. This is currently owned by the town, seen from Jenny Pond parking lot. And this is from standing on Frawley's Mountain, looking back towards Jenny Pond. These pictures were taken in the 1960s. So this is from that same location, probably around the turn of the century, looking back towards Mayflower Street. In the distance, you can see Town Square. This area here is now Jenny Pond parking lot, but that was the poorhouse. This is Arms Pond, or what we know today as Jenny Pond. And the next photo you can see is looking back at Mayflower Street. This property in the center is the Telkett property, and the Telkett family, is selling this property to the town of Plymouth, this land here on the far side of the hill. And again, we're back at Frawley's Mountain, looking back at town and looking at the pond itself. And again, this acquisition, as you can see here in this map, where there's Watson's Hill, there's the subject property in purple, Frawley's Mountain, and Huntley Lane. This will complete a small forest around Jenny Pond, which hope someday in the near future that we hope to build some trails in this area that highlight the Native American experience along Jenny Pond and Town Brook. And this is Mayflower Street. And that completes my presentation for Article 9B. So the next article is Article 9C, Historical Maps. This is to set aside $22,085 of CPA historical funds for the restoration, preservation, rehabilitation of 2 maps that the town have that would eventually be displayed at Town Hall, one from 1857, a county map, and from 1890, a coastal survey. This is a ongoing effort to examine the town's collection of art and historical objects to see what condition they are in and how we can better preserve them and display them. Here's the 1857 map showing the town of Plymouth as it relates to all the other towns in Plymouth County. It's quite large. It's like about 6 feet by 5 feet. Next slide is the coastal map. This is an interesting map showing Long Beach, Plymouth Harbor, the coastal areas of Plymouth and its water resources. And that completes Article C of the special town meeting. Article 9D, land off of Morgan Road. This is approximately 9.1 acres of land off of Morgan Road, off of Long Pond Road. This land is a unique piece of land. It's not terribly large in relationship to some of the other properties down in this area, but it acts as a critical link in a network of trails that we're building from Miles Standish Forest that lead down to Ellisville Harbor. This is land that abuts very close to Long Pond Road in the vicinity of the headquarters of the Wildlands Trust of Southeastern Massachusetts. The land that surrounds their property is open to the public for hiking and trailing. This parcel would enhance that. It's also land has been identified by the ENSA report, a town report that was done a few years back as an important parcel of land to acquire to build that network of trails. And here's the piece of land that I'm speaking of. Here's the highway coming down from Plymouth heading towards the Cape. Here's the exit for Beaver Dam Road. And here's the on-ramp coming on Clark Road. Here's Long Pond Road. This is the headquarters of the Wildlands Trust of Southeastern Massachusetts. This land would enhance their public space, and the public space is to the east heading towards Ellisville Harbor, town-owned conservation land in this direction, and also in this direction over here towards the west heading towards Miles Standish Forest. So this would be a nice piece to acquire to enhance that trail networking system through the area. Again, the subject property is made up of 3 different pieces off of Morgan Road and Clock Road at Long Pond Road. And that concludes my article for the Article 9D for the special town meeting.
Try now.
How's that? That was Bill Cohen, and he is Bill Cohen is the chair of the Community Preservation Committee, and he's also a town meeting member. I knocked off the switch. This is this is what happens with those of us that are not well skilled in some of these technology tasks. But anyway, we're going to continue now and go to Peter Neville, Precinct 10. Peter Neville is a town meeting member, and he requests to speak under the V-Voter application. So, Peter, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Great. My first question has to do with, I'm just able to get through now in terms of asking the question, but on the consent articles that you referred to right at the top of the show, my question is, how do they then, I guess, refer back when we get to the annual town meeting? Motion 3 says included in consent agenda. Now, does that mean that the consent agenda that we've had in the special includes motion 3 from the annual?
So, Peter, we're right now finishing up on the special town meeting warrant. Before we go to the annual, which is your question, do you have any questions on the special town meeting warrant?
So there's no relationship between those two?
No, the special town meeting consent
Great, that's good. That's
agenda
good. The second question,
motion.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
The second question I have is on motion 5 and motion 6. And I see no provisions in there to take a look at the cost of leasing space versus renovating and, purchasing a 30 million new, and I think that both articles should include an analysis of the lease cost, particularly since we have, I believe on page 27, a beautiful schedule of the amortized costs of $30 million plus interest.
So Peter Neville, that was 2 parts. That was a question and then argument on the motion.
I'm sorry.
So again, tonight we're gonna answer the question, but I'm gonna ask town meeting members to refrain from giving your opinion on what should happen. That's for next Monday. But for the question, let's go to Melissa Arrighi, our town manager. And we have a question from Peter Neville, Precinct 10, and it has to do with Articles, I believe, 5 and 6 is what he referred to, and leasing. Melissa.
Thank you very much. You know what, Mr. Neville, we didn't actually think or talk about including the option of leasing buildings when it came to looking at renovations and what we need to do. I don't know if that would be outside the scope of the article, but certainly from the town manager's point of view, if we could add the ability, I think it's helpful when we can make articles broader and give ourselves options. So if we could add the word lease and that would be allowed legally, certainly you'd hear no opposition from me.
So I'll make a motion to amend accordingly.
So Peter Neville, send that to me. I'll review it, and what I'll have to determine, to explain to all town meeting members, is whether or not your motion is within the scope of the article. Town meeting members are reminded that the selectmen determine the scope of the warrant article, and then we have to work within the scope of that article. So if the article contemplated leasing along with everything else, then we can accept the motion. If not, we'd have to wait. So unless there are any other questions on
Last question, Steve.
On the special
on Article 1, on motion 1, it turns out that we're going to add $900 per year for people with 15 years and $1,200 per year for people with 20 years. Is that added to the, so I guess for the town manager, is that amount added to the base so that any increments, cost of living, are on top of that, or is it a separate line item? In other words, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
If I'm making 50,000, now I make 50,900. Next year it's 50,000 plus 1,800, right? 2 years. But I'm going to get cost of living on my base or on everything.
Town Manager Melissa Arrighi responding. Melissa?
Thank you. No, longevity that you pay for all of us does not go on the base salary. It's a once a year payment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that was Peter Neville, and he is with Precinct 10. He's a town meeting member asking questions for the special town meeting. And now Mr. Neville also led into a question on the consent agenda for the annual town meeting. And so that's the first thing that we'll be taking up for the business of the annual town meeting, is whether or not to approve the consent agenda article. And before you, town meeting members, you see that we've consolidated and bundled Articles 2, 3, 4, 6, 12, 13, 14, 17, and 20. I have received a motion to divide Article 20, and I will review that tomorrow. But for purposes of this particular night, and in an effort to, again, practice and survey town meeting, we're now going to take another vote with the V-voter application. And this is going to be for town meeting members to vote on the annual town meeting consent agenda. So we're going to start the voting. You're going to have 1 minute in which to vote. And as soon as we get the timer going, we're going to begin voting, and we're going to start now. So you have 1 minute. So again, town meeting members, for those of you watching the live presentation, they can vote 1, they can vote yes, they can vote 2, they can vote no, they can vote 3, and they can vote abstain, and we'll then see their votes after the 1 minute. Again, today this is not binding. We're really surveying town meeting members to determine whether or not on town meeting night that they wish to proceed with a consent agenda. The consent agenda is the town's effort to pare down the warrant for this town meeting in order to assure that we can proceed with a virtual town meeting with remote participation. We're down to 12 seconds as town meeting members are voting, and then we're going to see what the vote is. We're hopeful that by the end of tomorrow night that most town meeting members will feel comfortable with this process. We've completed the voting. They had a minute to vote. 63 voted in favor, 17 no, 5 abstentions. We're going to go through the various precincts to see how you voted. Precincts 1, 2, and 3 are shown. Again, this is not binding, but this gives us a sense of town meeting, at least as to this evening with this town meeting presentation. We're going to precincts 4, 5, and 6. As we scroll through the precincts, town meeting members have an opportunity to see whether or not their vote was correctly recorded. If there's an error, town meeting members can do a point of order through the V-voter application, and they can also try to reach us in that way. And so we're currently at precincts 10, 11, and 12. And you'll see here as we go through the precincts, it gives us a chance. Now, some people who have participated in this presentation, I'm not necessarily seeing their vote. So we'll be working with people to determine how to help them have their votes register. 13, 14, and 15. So we've continued now with town meeting on the annual town meeting warrant. And we're going to go to Article 7 for the next article. And we have a video from the Director of Finance, Lynn Barrett. I'd like to welcome Lynn to this presentation, and Lynn is going to give us her presentation on Article 7 in the annual town meeting, which is the operating budget and certain other enterprise funds. And this is coming to you live from PACTV studio.
Good evening, everyone. I am Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance for the Town of Plymouth. I am here this evening to present to you the financial budget presentation for town meeting. My presentation also includes some other important information which I think will be helpful for you in your decision-making process. I want to start out by thanking all of you for your time and support in this virtual process. It is new for all of us, and it is difficult and challenging at sometimes, but I believe that we're all in this together and we are going to get this done. I appreciate your stepping up to the challenge for this virtual town meeting process, and we really appreciate that. So starting out, I'm going to share my screen. This presentation, I'm giving it to you the week before the August 3rd meeting. So sometimes when I talk, I might say today and that kind of thing. So today's date is July 30th. It's Thursday, the week before the presentations. So before I get started, I just want to remind everyone, town meeting members especially the newer ones, of the financial information that you can find on our website. If you go to the Town of Plymouth homepage and you click on departments and you click on finance department, you will find this page. On the left-hand side, there's several links to important information. The one I want to focus on is the Financial Report Center. This link brings you to a laundry list of items that I believe are important financial documents and other pertinent information for all town meeting members and for the public in Plymouth at large. It has all of our audits, budget information, a lot of information on our debt, which includes our official statements and activity that we've done in debt in the last couple of years. Includes our financial policies, and these are policies related to free cash and other fund balances in town. We have a financial report center, which gives a financial history of the current year, monthly revenues and expenditures, annual reports that we give to the town clerk, budget reports, Schedule A, which is an important document that's our filing to the Department of Revenue of all revenues and expenditures for the town, which includes budgets and grants, revolving and other special funds. Includes information on free cash and enterprise retained earnings. There's a tab for our OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits. This has information on our valuations since we've started doing valuations. It includes a special act, which was adopted by the legislature and town meeting, and includes other important information about OPEB. The CPA tab brings you a history of some expenditures that we have with the CPA Act. The meals tax has some information on meals tax, stabilization fund, and glossary of terms. On the left-hand side, we also have some other information that might be important to you. Division of Local Services, which guides us in everything that we do. Pilot agreements for the Entergy company that we have intact right now. These are agreements that are through fiscal 21, and it is the town's intention to meet with Holtec, the new owner, to come up with a supplemental agreement. It also includes the link to town meeting information and our Transparency Center, which is basically our open checkbook. There's some new information that we just added this week. And we added this because of the number of phone calls and inquiries that we have been getting through the treasurer collector's office with regards to billing, when bills have gone out, when the due dates are, information like that. So we added under the homepage, the Citizen Action Center, there's a link called Bill Information. And when you click on that, it'll bring you to this page. And this page, as it stands, July 30th, today, the day I'm putting this together, due to the pandemic, the select board adopted some special legislation offered by the state to waive penalties and interest for bills that were mailed and had a due date after March 10th, as long as those bills were paid by June 29th. This waiver information was posted on our website after they took this vote, until this included several bills that had gone out, some of which were motor vehicle excise due March 30th and after, water and sewer bills, which were due April 24th, real estate and personal property bills due May 1st. Many taxpayers took advantage of this waiver and paid their bills by June 29th. However, there were several who did not pay by June 29th. In the middle of July, about 2 weeks after that, the town sent out demand notices for all those unpaid bills, which included a demand fee and interest added dating back to the due dates of the particular bill. Having this information on our website will hopefully be helpful to people regarding when these bills go out, when's the due date, within how much time we send out demands, when penalties and interest are added, what happens after demands are due. For example, on these water and sewer demands that were just sent out, they were due yesterday. The town will begin water hangers and shutoffs within the next few weeks in working with the water department. So if people still have an unpaid water and sewer bill, my recommendation would be to pay that as soon as possible. Real estate and personal property taxes, demands are due yesterday. Tax takings would be the next step for tax liens. That usually happens within the next few months. Motor vehicle excise tax demands are due tomorrow, July 31st. The town's deputy collector will begin the warrant process on those by August 17th, which will include additional fees. So it's really important that taxpayers pay your bills in a timely manner, and to have this information put out there so that if you haven't gotten a bill, that you please call us at the collector's office. Also, for new homeowners who recently purchased a home, at the closing, you are told that the new bill will continue to be mailed to the old owner, because it is always mailed to the owner of record as of January 1st in a particular year. So you would need to contact the assessor's office to get an in care of address added to your bill, so that the post office would send it in care of you. Sometimes the post office will return those, so we advise you to continue to follow up with the collector's office to receive a copy of your bill. The town now is on a quarterly basis with water and sewer bills. So under normal circumstances, the due dates will fall in the following months: August, November, February, and May. So currently right now for fiscal 21, with our new bills, the water and sewer bills went out. They were mailed on July 22nd. They're due on August 24th. Real estate and personal property taxes were mailed on June 30th for the first and second quarter. So the first quarter is due August 1st, second quarter is due November 1st. At the bottom of this bill information page is the link to bring you to the online payments center, which is Unipay, which is our third-party provider for you to be able to pay your bills online for these particular ones that we're going to post here. As we go forward, we'll continue to add things on here, and we'll take the old items off. The next topic I wanted to talk to you about is the Plymouth County Cares program. This topic does not pertain directly to the deliberations at town meeting, but I believe it's important to discuss the coronavirus relief fund called Plymouth County Cares. Plymouth County received over $90 million as part of the Federal CARES Act, coronavirus relief funds. This money is being dispersed to the Plymouth County communities based on a reimbursement program for costs associated with the response and/or mitigation of the COVID-19 spread through December 30th. The county has allocated a little more than half of this funding in phases as seen in this schedule. Plymouth's allocation is $5.4 million based on population, COVID case numbers, and elderly population. There will be more allocations in future phases. This information, along with the federal guidance of what is eligible for reimbursement, frequently asked questions, and other important information can be found on the Plymouth County Commissioner's website. This spreadsheet as of July 17th, which is on the Plymouth County CARES website, the county has reimbursed 10 communities a total of $1.9 million. According to their website minutes of their July 10th meeting, the treasurer reported that a total of 46 applications from 25 communities for a total of $7.4 million had been received and were being processed, and hoped that more would be coming forward to a future meeting for approval. So Plymouth's status is indicated in this spreadsheet. So over on the left-hand side, I've identified the 3 phases that they have allocated the money out. Phases 1, 2, and 3 for a total of $5.4 million. The town, under the first phase, expended and submitted their first application for $601,656.43. That application is under review. We have received some questions and have answered those questions, and in hopes that we are one of those submittals that will be going to a future commissioners meeting for approval. Currently, right now, we are in the process of submitting our second application for reimbursement tomorrow, July 31st. And that application is under phase 2 and phase 3, which add up to about $193,000 and some change. According to their website, the phase 1 monies that remain get forwarded into phase 2. So we still have available to us under these 3 phases $3.7 million based on the applications that we've submitted so far, and we have also approved internally requisitions that total $930,661.68. These expenditures and others include expenses for all town departments, including the schools, and range from personal services of overtime related to COVID-19, cleaning services, supplies and equipment, PPE, signage, reopening supplies and equipment, technology for working and educating remotely, and other COVID-19 related expenditures. While the current federal guidance does not allow the funds to be used for revenue replacement, we are hoping that the legislation may change on that, or that other relief may be voted by the federal government. You will see in the budget discussion that revenues are expected to recede based on the pandemic effect on the state and economy. I hope you're all familiar with this website page, which is the quick links. And on the quick links is the town meeting information link. When you click that link, that brings you to everything associated with the current town meeting. On top of this page, which you can't see here, it also includes a link to previous town meetings. And we have on that page through all the way back to 2015, every town meeting and all the pertinent information that was associated with each of those meetings. So this page is the home page for all the items related to the current meeting. this is a screenshot of the of what is out there. So everything that is on this page has been mailed to you either in one of two mailings. The first mailing happened while we were working remotely, probably back in late April or May. The books for town meeting. There were 2 blue books and a red book, and then the school budget book. The 2 blue books, one of them is the advisory and finance recommendation book. One of them is the budget book. And then the red book was the book for the special town meeting. So included in there is all kinds of information regarding town meeting and the recommendations from advisory and finance and the detail behind that. The most recent mailing that we sent you a couple weeks ago included a supplement number 1 for the, and we called it supplement 1 spring virtual town meeting, because now we're having it in August, even though it's our spring meeting. And that included new recommendations from advisory and finance committee on the budget. It also included backup associated with those budget decisions. So it included sources and uses page, which is page 18 and 19, which I will talk about in further detail later regarding the budget, what the budget looked like in April, if we had gone to town meeting in April, and then what it looked like after the COVID-19 effect, after the pandemic effect, because we have made a lot of various different assumptions on the budget, and we have made some corresponding reductions to the budget. Also included in that mailing was the draft spring town meeting motions. That includes funding sources of all of the various articles and basically how each town meeting vote is going to be recommended to you. Those motions are draft form, and there will be a final motion document that will be available to town meeting members on the website. And if time prevails, we will mail those motions to you. However, motions do change up until and including at town meeting. So we'll do the best we can. A lot of people have been asking about what is our free cash balance, what are we using free cash for, and I wanted to give you some information on that. For those of you who don't know what free cash is, it's a term used by the Department of Revenue to describe a revenue source that results from the calculation as of July 1 of a community's remaining unrestricted funds from its operations of the previous fiscal year based on the balance sheet as of June 30th. It typically includes actual receipts in excess of revenue, estimates and unspent amounts in departmental budget line items for the year just ending, plus unexpended free cash from the previous year. Free cash is offset by property tax receivables and certain deficits, and as a result, can be a negative number. This schedule describes the balance remaining after the October fall annual town meeting and what this meeting's recommendations of spending are. The town's policy is to use for capital and more one-time expenditures, not as a recurring funding source for the budget. So you'll see in this list that most of the recommendations are for capital items that you will see in the special town meeting book in motions, and then in the annual town meeting book in motions. So one item that we use funding of free cash in the operating budget is funds towards the investment into our OPEB trust fund. Under normal circumstances, our policy is to deposit at least 1% of our covered payroll into our OPEB trust fund to help offset the liability of the OPEB, because of the pandemic, I am recommending and had recommended to the board and advisory and finance committee to reduce that 1%, which was over $1 million, to $500,000. The other amount would have come from taxes. So this amount that would be going into the trust fund would be coming from free cash. I thought that this was a way to reduce the amount of taxes that would have to be raised in this unprecedented year. As you can see at the annual, we have various capital projects being funded through free cash under Article 9A, and then other items. So the recommendation after all these expenditures would leave a balance in the free cash of $1,146,028. And that's of the free cash that had been certified last year as of July 1/19. When we finish closing our books for 2020, we will have a new free cash certification that will happen prior to our fall annual town meeting. The same goes for the sewer enterprise fund. Retained earnings, like free cash for the general fund, is certified by the Department of Revenue for enterprise funds. This money can be used for capital projects and to reduce the rates that are established within those enterprise funds. And we are doing just that in the articles going forward to town meeting. The Sewer Enterprise Fund is going through a transition this coming fiscal year in transferring to a new operator from Veolia to Woodward and Curran, and the financing of the sewer emergency project. So the budget has been adjusted for the new operator, and the financing of the sewer project is in a tentative stage. So there is some funding for it if it happens during this particular fiscal year. But as it stands right now.
Thank you. We're going to suspend this for the moment. We're getting reports that the video needs to be cleaned up, and PACTV has indicated that they're going to work on the audio and then send this out to all of you to be able to watch this. So we're now going to go to some questions. The first question was emailed to me. It is from Lori Hutchinson, and the question I think will first go to Lynn Barrett, who is one of our panelists. And the question is, could you explain how actual expenditures in fiscal 2020 presented in the budget documentation book dated July 17, 2020 were impacted by COVID-19, and how and whether the Finance Committee factored in a projection for an additional impact from COVID-19, and if so, what and where and why was factored in their fiscal 2021 revised recommendation. So I'll go to Lynn Barrett. I know we have Kevin Canty also in our panel, but we'll start with the Director of Finance. Lynn, welcome this evening.
Hi. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I apologize for that. I hope that they can clean up the budget presentation and that you'll be able to see it at another time. And also, I've actually sent my presentation to the Director of Information Technology in hopes that he can upload that presentation to the town meeting information quick links website tonight so that town meeting members can open it up and look at it themselves. It was just completed last week, so not in your town meeting packets. Normally the presentation isn't in your packets. We usually do it at town meeting, so I apologize for that. As far as the question regarding the effect of COVID-19, so COVID-19 definitely affected the budgets as we closed out our fiscal year 2020, specifically in those departments where buildings were closed, savings in fuel and utilities, especially on the school side, the budget, we had a significant savings in transportation because the buses weren't running, in other areas. On the town side, we had significant savings. We're not finished closing out the budget yet with regards to the revenue side and the expenditure side. So we're in the process of finalizing our encumbrances, which are items that we've spent but have not paid. So we carry over a portion of the budget into the following fiscal year for that. But on the school side, it's looking like we're going to have a savings of approximately $3 million on the budget. And then on the town side, it looks like we're going to have a savings of approximately $5 million on the budget. On the revenue side, we're still working on closing out the revenue side. At June 30th, we actually had a revenue deficit of about it was around $2.6 million, I believe, on the revenue side for fiscal 20. However, we are still closing out fiscal 20, and once we finish that, and we keep our books open on the revenue side for real estate and personal property, because under Massachusetts general law, we can do a 60-day accrual to accrue any revenue collected during the months of July and August for the previous fiscal year's real estate tax and personal property tax bill. So we do that normally every year, and this year especially because people took advantage of not paying on time on the May 1st deadline, and some went past June 30th. So we're looking forward to sort of bringing that revenue on during the months of July and August. And so that certainly, on the revenue side, we certainly had an effect from COVID-19. And within the budget presentation, I specifically go into those different areas where we saw a decrease year over year on the revenue side. Specifically, areas like the hotel, motel excise, on licenses and permits, on investment income, motor vehicle excise. There was definitely effect on that. So hopefully we'll be able to get that budget presentation put up on the website tonight so that you can open it up, download it, look at it. If you have any questions, obviously before town meeting, please contact me, either my phone or by email. The information is in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to Michael Hanlon. He's with Precinct 15. He's asked to speak on the motion. Michael Hanlon, and then we're going to go back to Michael Withington, since he had a question earlier. I believe it was on the budget, and I deferred it to now. So we're going to first welcome Michael Hanlon, Precinct 15. We were hearing the presentation on Article 7 of the annual town meeting warrant, which has to do with the budget for fiscal 2021. And Michael Hanlon. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Can you hear me all right?
We can. Good evening.
Okay, thank you. I have a question about Article 7, and then I have a second procedural question. So the question on Article 7. I have a piece of paper, I assume I got it from somebody in Town Hall, that showed 4 new hires. Now, this goes back to the original budget that was proposed for town meeting back in April, and I understand there's been significant changes. At April town meeting, they were proposing 4 new hires, 1 in the water department, 1 in public works, and 2 IT positions. I'm curious if the current budget includes any new hires and who they are. That's my first question.
And we're going to go to the town manager, Melissa Arrighi, who's been with us this evening. Melissa, do you want to take this question, or you want to throw it to Lynn Barrett?
No, we can bounce off each other, but I want to let you know that the proposed budget this year does not include any new positions. In addition, the budget that we are proposing freezes those 2 new IT positions as well.
Thank you. Michael Hanlon, another question.
Yes, sir. This is a procedural question. I just noticed that when Lynn was making or answering one question, she appeared on the screen. When Melissa answered the question, she appeared on the screen. So my question is, do you have the ability to put town meeting members who are speaking or asking questions up on the screen so we can see them?
The answer is no, and I'm going to throw that to Nicole Manfredi, Assistant Town Moderator. She's more expert than I am.
I don't know about
Nicole.
that.
Thank you.
So we had talked about this at all of the training sessions prior. We are not able to bring in attendees with video, and we had talked about this. Mark actually had given some clarification at length. But the short version is, if we do that, we crash the system. So only panelists are allowed to come in with video.
Any other questions, Michael?
No more questions. I think it's unfortunate that we can't see our town meeting members, but thanks for the answer.
Thank you. Yes, we're trying to balance everything in order to respond to the coronavirus, and I think we're doing the best we can. At this time, I'm going to go back to Michael Withington. Michael, has your question been answered? And if not, did you want to pose it to the Director of Finance?
I'll try to pose it, and it does. If it can't have an answer today, I'd like it prior to town meeting. But basically, looking for what is the revenue shortfall for the town from, in comparison to 2019 to 2020. And I realize this is a dynamic question to answer, but I think that it would help on a dollar and percentage basis if the town meeting members were aware of the revenue shortfall. And I will say one thing, I think that we are at a visual disadvantage not being able to see town meeting members. Steve, you look handsome, but I also would like to be able to view my fellow town meeting representatives. So Lynn, if you could possibly answer that question, obviously, hotel, motel, restaurants, we have considerable negative impacts to the town, and I'm just looking for a number that could give us an insight on where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance, responding to a question from Michael Withington, Precinct 5 Town Meeting Member. Lynn.
Yes, hi. So we definitely had an impact, as I said earlier, on the fiscal 20 revenue numbers versus the previous year. Within the budget presentation that we were trying to run earlier, I went through two reports. One is the fiscal 20 and then one is the fiscal 19 report. My IT director said that he has put that presentation on the website. I just went there. I'm trying to find the link. I'm not really sure exactly where he put it, but once I locate it, I will let all town meeting members know that it is where it is and where they can get it. But basically, as a percentage of budget on collections from the fiscal 20, in total, we were under budget. We budgeted revenues of $243 million. We took in approximately $239 million. So we have a revenue deficit of $2.6 million. And it's a combination of various items. One of them specifically is property taxes. And as I mentioned earlier, there were several people who took advantage of not paying on time, which the due date was May 1st. We gave people until June 29th to pay. And then we had several people after that who didn't pay. So my hopes is that those get paid during the months of July and August, and we can accrue them back to June 30th. So those revenue items those collections will help reduce that deficit. The other items that contributed to it were a deficit in just other departmental revenue in and of itself, because town hall was closed. A lot of the buildings were closed. They weren't, selling things to customers or to taxpayers. Licenses and permits were down over the previous year and down from budget. In your town meeting books, in your supplement book that we sent to you in the mail just a couple weeks ago, in the red thicker packet, on page 21, there is a state aid and local receipts. So specifically those areas, you can see the 2020 actuals, and then you can see the 2019 actuals. And I highlighted in gray those receipts that are down in 2020 versus the previous year. So that's another area where you can find the information that I'm referring to. So that is in your town meeting packets that I sent out to you. The previous year, 2019, will also be included in the presentation. But as far as budget to actual, the previous year, we did not have a revenue deficit. We actually took in more revenues than we had budgeted, to the tune of approximately 2.2 million. So, excuse me, under normal circumstances, what happens is that revenue, the budget that comes in, the revenue that comes in over what we budget flows to the general fund at the end of the year, closes out and gets certified to free cash. The revenue deficit this year for fiscal 20, that deficit will be offset by those savings in the budget that I referred to in the school and the town to help offset that revenue deficit. So I hope that tried to answer your question. There's information in the supplement on revenues from 2019 and 2020. And then once we find where the budget presentation is that I did this evening, we'll tell you where it is on the website, okay?
Lynn Barrett, she's the Director of Finance for the Town of Plymouth. We're now going to go back to Melissa Arrighi, our Town Manager, and she's going to further respond to what she had said previously. Melissa.
Thank you, Moderator Triffletti. One correction for the previous requester, the town meeting member that asked about any new initiatives. I completely forgot about the enterprise funds. I was thinking about the operating budget. And we do have a new water treatment operator in there because we brought the new well online this year.
Thank you, Melissa Arrighi, Town Manager. We have another number of town meeting members that we're going to return to for previous articles, but in staying with Article 7, I believe Peter Neville has a question. Peter Neville, Precinct 10. Are you there, Peter?
Thank you. Thank you. It's, I'm sure a simple clarification. Motion 3 identifies a bunch of revolving funds. If I just take the Plymouth Beach Fund for $367,940, I'm trying to understand how that relates to the motion 7A, Plymouth Beach revolving, and I believe it's $11,592. And so perhaps the question is, as I look at the list from Title V to free cash, a reduction of $3,630,000 to the operating budget there in 7A, to net out at $230,479. How is the 367 that's shown on 3A part of the top line in 7A, 234,110, et cetera?
Lynn Barrett is Director of Finance. Lynn, could you respond to Peter Neville?
Yes, Peter, similar to the email that you sent me last week, you asked specifically about the recreation revolving account. All of those revolving accounts that are in Article 3, you're authorizing a spending limit for a specific operation which is performed by that particular department. None of those expenditures are included in Article 7. They are not included in the budget. So they are not a duplication. It's a completely separate operation for specific items that are funded through the revolving fund, and then their budget contains other items. So
then what's the revenue source for the revolving fund?
Each revolving fund has its own unique revenue source.
Thank you.
And those are identified when the revolving fund gets established, and it's in our bylaws because they get voted by a bylaw and it gets added into the bylaws. So, for example, Plymouth Long Beach, the 4x4 sales for Plymouth Long Beach go into the revolving account, And then a portion of the parking revenue for Long Beach goes into the that revolving account.
And can you just refer me to where the schedules would be for those revolving accounts so I can see those revenue sources that, you know,
Included in the report and recommendations book from Advisory and Finance, there should be a report that lists the revenues and the expenditures for each revolving account for the previous fiscal year and for the current fiscal year through December 31st. I have the book right here behind me, so it should be included in Article 3 of the report and recommendations.
the new red one, or are we going back to the
It's a blue book. It's a blue book because it's the annual town meeting.
Yep.
And the revenue and expenditures are on pages 42 through 45 for each of the revolving accounts. And
I believe
those pages include what the revenue sources are for each fund, what expenditures are, and what the spending limits are. And then the actual activity for fiscal 19 and for fiscal 20 through December 31st of 19 is on pages 46 through 48.
Thank you for your guidance.
Thank you. That's Peter Neville, Precinct 10. We're going to go back now to a couple of town meeting members that may have questions for earlier articles. We're going to begin with Alan Costello, also in Precinct 10, followed by Catherine Holmes, Precinct 8. Alan Costello, welcome. Alan Costello is in Precinct 10. And this is a town meeting presentation coming to you live. Alan, welcome.
Good evening, Steve. Thank you for acknowledging me. I had a couple of questions early on the first vote. You've sort of cleared that up, but I was wondering if you go back and get it on the record who was here tonight at your convenience. The second question I had was to see if we can get a vote on who could understand Article 7 presentation, but you've since resolved that as well. Thank you for acknowledging me. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. We're next going to go to Catherine Holmes, Precinct 8. Catherine, good evening. I'd like to welcome Catherine back. And this is our town meeting presentation. Is coming to you live.
She should be there.
Catherine,
Her mic's live.
are you still there?
She's up.
If not, we can come back to Catherine. We're not hearing her. So we'll come back. Richard Cirque, Precinct 2. Richard, are you there?
Richard Cirque, Precinct 2.
Richard wanted to come in earlier to speak to us.
Kevin, Larry.
And I believe he was logged in under another name.
Now, Steve?
Oh, there's Catherine. All right, let's do Catherine. We'll come back to Richard.
Can you hear me?
I can hear Richard.
I'll wait.
All right, let's do Richard first, Catherine. You've already spoken. Go ahead, Richard.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. My question pertained to articles, to the motions 1A through 1E in the special, the approval of the memoranda of agreements and the arbitrators awards. These approval articles, as we all know, typically come before town meeting for funding. And I've always had the question in my mind, do we really have the option to vote no on these? And and the answer may be different based upon whether it was an agreement or whether it was an arbitrator's award. And if the related question is, if we do indeed have the ability to vote no, what would be the consequence of voting no on either the memoranda of agreements or the arbitrators awards?
Melissa,
because I'd like to believe that the town meeting is not merely a rubber stamp that has one option if in fact we're being asked to vote yes or no.
Melissa Arrighi, Town Manager, responding to a question from Richard Cirque. Welcome back, Melissa.
Thank you. Mr. Cirque, town meeting can always vote down an article. What that would mean for the management team is we need to go back to the negotiating table and start over with the union and see if we can resolve it.
That satisfy you, Richard?
Is that also the case with respect to the arbitration award?
Melissa?
That is correct.
Wow.
I was not aware of that. I thought with respect to the arbitration awards, the town merely has to fund it because it was an arbitrator's decision as opposed to the memoranda of agreement.
How the article is worded in the history of Plymouth is that you approve changes to the collective bargaining agreement and changes to the bylaws.
Yeah. If I could just make a comment, I'm certain.
Questions, Richard? Comments about town meeting?
Okay, well, fine, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Catherine Holmes.
Hi, I think this is a question for Mr. Beater, and I think he was on the line, right?
He is a panelist, that's correct.
Okay, so my question is on Article 5. And he and I have talked about this last year. It seems to me that I'm being frequently asked to vote on articles for people to come in and evaluate, to be able to, do a feasibility study. And I know that we had done one of those, a really extensive one years ago, that we paid at town meeting $140,000 to determine what the impact of our buildings were and what the state was. And then last year we were asked to pay a lot less money for another, what was referred to as like an audit or feasibility study, which I think ended up being not really a study, but more of a tool that is used internally. And so now we have another one in front of us for the fire stations for $500,000. So I was just I would like to hear what a lot of folks that I've talked to feel that we're in this perpetual motion of these studies, and we really just need to be spending the money on repairing our building. So what is the difference between the 3 audits that we've done? And if they weren't audits, can you give us some insight again, Mr. Beater, on what did we pay for?
Jonathan Beater is the Director of the Department of Public Works. Welcome, Jonathan. You need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
He's unmuted.
So go ahead, start speaking. They said you're unmuted, go ahead. Can't hear you.
He's gonna unmute himself now.
Unmute yourself, go ahead.
He's connecting, give him a second.
Okay. Can't hear you yet. They said you're connecting. This is a Plymouth Town Meeting presentation. It's coming to us live on Monday, August 3rd. This is a question from Catherine Holmes to Jonathan Beater. He is the Director, Department of Public Works. Jonathan, you want to try again?
Not yet.
So while we're waiting for him to connect, perhaps we can have him call in on a phone line.
It's on his end.
It's on his end, I'm told. JB, it's not coming in. I'm going to ask Melissa Arrighi, the town manager, whether or not she's in a position to answer, and if not, we'll come back with a response tomorrow night to Catherine's question. Let's go to Melissa Arrighi, town manager. Melissa, are you able to respond?
So of course, I would prefer to defer this to JB, and we're trying to get on the phone right now together. But I think there is a real difference, Catherine, between those 3. I actually think it's important to address that because I too have heard the complaints that we're always studying things. One was an overall look at every one of that facilities assessment report, looked at every one of our 32 buildings. When does the roof need to be replaced? When do the windows need to be done? When does the HVAC need to be looked at? And what was that in that day's dollars? So that gave us the outline for each of our buildings. This study looks specifically at those fire stations and says, what is the best thing you can do with the money you have available? Is it the windows? Is it do the asbestos first? In doing the asbestos, will that take up all the money just to do the West Plymouth building? So they are distinct. And you're right. Do we have to spend quite a bit of taxpayer dollars on these overviews or assessments to tell us what to do for the buildings. We do. We don't have that kind of expertise on staff. We're hoping to announce a new facilities manager soon, but even he wouldn't have that level of being able to look at each of those buildings and saying what absolutely needs to be done
They're all
now.
annual
So
now. We just-
let me get you a little better response. Let me see if I can get JB on the phone. If not, we'll write up something tomorrow about something distinct about each one of those studies and get it out to everybody.
Yeah, I think it would be really helpful just to understand where the benefits, did we get any benefits from the studies that we'd had in the past? I think that would be incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine Holmes, Precinct 8. We're going to go to Donald Williams. He is a town meeting member also from Precinct 8. Don Williams is also requested to speak. And we're going to go to Don. Are we able to connect to him yet? We're going to be connecting to him momentarily. This is a presentation night, August 3rd. We are in the annual town meeting article, and there's Don. Welcome, Don.
Welcome. Thank you for all you're doing. My question is about the school budget. I noticed that there was a $2 million reduction. I understand that there were teachers that retired and to come up with that money. My question is whether there will be any increase in class size because of those cuts.
So we're going to go to Gary Costin, who is the business manager for the Plymouth Public Schools. However, I would like to remind town meeting members that we don't have line item authority for the school budget, just the bottom line. Gary Costin, welcome to the presentation night.
Thank you very much. The reductions for the school budget were mostly made up of through attrition. So they really will not affect class sizes. In addition, the school committee right now in the other room here in Lincoln Street is looking at models to bring students back where the class sizes will actually be reduced, i.e. hybrid models versus remote learning. So the simple answer is no, the result was really due to attrition through retirement.
Thank you. That's Gary Costin, business manager, Plymouth Public Schools, responding to Donald Williams, Precinct 8. And at this time, we don't have any more speaker requests. We're going to continue with our presentations. We do not have a video for Article 9 capital projects, but we are going to continue with Article 16A. And we have a presentation from, once again, the chair of the Community Preservation Committee, Bill Cohen. Welcome back, Bill. We're going to go to the presentation video now. And thereafter, I have a question that I received in advance, which will be asking that question from a town meeting member. This is the presentation night, and this is coming to you live from PACTV Studios on August 3rd. We're going to go to the video now.
Again, Article 16B of the annual town meeting is for the National Memorial Pilgrim Meeting House in Town Square. This would pay the remaining balance of the short-term borrowing for the renovations to the meeting house. This would eliminate the borrowing that we took place to make the repairs. So again, this would eliminate any future interest payments or any costs associated with the work that took place over at the meeting house, because this would pay off that borrowing. And here's a picture of the meeting house during its restoration. If you hadn't have a chance to go by, it's completely restored now. And there's a picture of the Robinson windows that were allowed to go back in. There's Reverend Robinson in Leiden, in Holland. If you look closely, he's preparing the pilgrims for departure to the New World. And those windows were made by Tiffany and restored with CPA funds. And the facade is now restored, and the building is completed in its exterior renovations. Article 16C, Stevens Field reboot. Article 16C will pay down the borrowing authorization for Stevens Field. This is another article where we have the authorization to borrow. We haven't borrowed as of yet. for the renovations to Stevens Field. What we have been doing is putting money, CPA available funds aside so we can reduce the borrowing authorization. So we'll end up borrowing less, saving on interest payments. Just to let people know, the Department of Marine Environmental Affairs under David Gould is working on the final permits for Stevens Field. There were some alterations to the plan as a result. From the time we had the plan set up, there was a Stevens Field Planning and Design Committee. They came up with a plan, but they met again last year to discuss that plan. There were some alterations, so there needed to be some new permitting. That permitting is underway, and they should be completed by the end of this year, where construction can begin late this year, early next year at Stevens Field. Here's a picture of Stevens Field. The alteration was in this vicinity here, they were going to build pickleball courts. So there's some accommodation to a growing activity, pickleball, at this location. But that's the plan for Stevens Field. That is kind of an overlay of Stevens Field as it relates to the neighborhood. And this was the Stevens Field Design and Planning Committee had a community meeting, and that was the meeting that took place last summer, where there was a consensus to move forward with limited alterations to the original plan under the direction of David Gould in the Office of Marine Environmental Affairs. That completes my presentation on Article 16C. Article 16E, ADA compliance. Community Preservation Committee is recommending to utilize CPA funds, recreational funds, in the amount of $564,000 to address violations at Manomet recreational areas, Seversfield, and West Plymouth recreational area. Town of Plymouth has a number of parks. These parks were cited by the state to not be in compliance. If we do not make these renovations to the park, the town would be could incur fines from the state. So we're working with the Town of Plymouth to address the compliance issues, because CPA funds can be used for ADA compliance. This article will address that. There are 9 remaining parks. The committee did want to make note to the town that we're looking for a match in future requests for funding for ADA compliance. Often when you see a CPA article, you'll see the partner or the applicant putting up a match. We're looking for opportunities to address that, and we work with the town to explore the possibilities of grants that would be used for future matches to become ADA compliant in the remaining 9 parks. That concludes my article presentation on the ADA compliance article. Article 16F is the creation of 6 pickleball courts out at Forges Field. The Department of Recreation has been able to secure funding. They were looking for additional $120,000 from the Town of Plymouth Community Preservation Fund for additional 6 pickleball courts at Forges Field. They were able to raise $50,000 as a match. So between the $120,000 and the $50,000, we'll be able to construct 6 pickleball courts at Forges Field. Again, it's a growing activity with a growing demographic in the Town of Plymouth that gets people outdoors, exercising, and the Department of Recreation will oversee the construction of these pickleball courts. That concludes my presentation on Article 16F. Article 16G, Burial Hill Phase 3. Article 16G would utilize $200,000 of CPA historical funds for the restoration, preservation, and rehabilitation of headstones and monuments, and the stone retaining wall along the stairs that head up to the entrance to Burial Hill at Town Square. The article would also cover the cost of updating a very important report that we had done back in 2012, telling us what stones needed repair. There have been numerous efforts in different phases of stone restoration since 2012 with CPA funds, community preservation funds. $500,000 was set aside for the restoration of headstones back in 2012. The Friends of Burial Hill have been actively working with the town of Plymouth, and they have been doing headstone restoration. So between all the restoration, the volunteer efforts, and the paid efforts of CPA funds, this report would identify where we are 8 years later and what we have to do in terms of further restoration to headstones. This is the location of the National Pilgrim Memorial Meeting House after the 1894 fire, where the building was burnt down to the ground. But you can see, I show this picture because it shows how at one time there was a road going up to Burial Hill. Now that area is a series of steps and stairs and retaining walls. And I can show you that in the next slide. This is around the turn of the century. To the left is the National Memorial Meeting House. And you can see the facade of that building is the same cut of stone as the stairs and the entrance. And this is what we would work on. These columns and this wall going up would be restored, repointed, and back to what it was at the time of when it was constructed. And here is at the top of that stone retaining wall, again, around the turn of the century, some people making their way up to Burial Hill. Here's its current condition. You can see where the repointing is necessary, where there's seepage and loss of lime mortar. This corrosive behavior allows water in. Water can freeze and expand and contract and do more damage to the wall. So all this wall would be repointed, and these columns at the entrance would be repointed. So you can see right now it's in dire need of repair, especially with the new meeting house next door looking so sharp, and with the future plans of restoring the surface area of Town Square. The next step in addressing some of the maintenance efforts at Burial Hill will be this staircase in this article. And again, this is a closer look at that repointing that needs to happen, where you can see down along here where it has the mortar has come out and water has gotten in and done damage. And again, this expenditure will allow us to start addressing not only headstones, but some of the monuments in the Burial Hill area. And here's some of the stones that you can see are in need of restoration. Some of it pretty spectacular carvings. And that completes my presentation on the Burial Hill article. Article 16H is for the 2021 CPA budget. The Community Preservation Act allows for 10% of the revenue coming in to be set aside for housing, historical, and open space. It does allow a 4% administrative account. We keep it to 3%, and that 3% is used for the administrative activities of the Community Preservation Act. And those expenditures have been focused for the last 18 years on the administrative activities, the legal cost of appraisals, signage and trailhead renovations, access to possible conservation land, emergency work to protect CPA resources as we move them through town meeting. So we've utilized our administrative fund to help the town address some of those issues. When we buy a piece of land, we make sure that it has appropriate signage, that we've done the engineering, that we have trails, parking, fencing, surface area improvements. So that's the utilization of the CPA fund. So the CPA fund, administrative fund, is used for those activities. And this is the budget. Lynn Barrett's available to answer questions in terms of the budget that we have for 2021. I know as we move into this fiscal year, as a delay from our April town meeting to our August town meeting, there'll be some adjustments to those balances. Again, this is the outgoing expenditures account for the available funds that we have for the CPA. You can see there for fiscal year 2019 and 2020, you can see some of the outstanding articles in terms of their balances. Article A, B, C, D, E, and F from the previous fiscal year. Again, Lynn Barrett's available to answer any questions about the account balances for the Community Preservation Act. And that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions, feel free. I'm available to answer any questions pertaining to any of the articles that we presented this evening. And again, thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, and that was Bill Cohen. He is the chair of the Community Preservation Committee. I did receive a question in advance from Wynn Gerhard from Precinct 13. And Bill, we're going to go to you as a panelist now. Her question, I believe you covered it, but with respect to 16C, she would like the brief update on the plans and timing for the renovation, which was approved in 2015 special town meeting regarding Stevens Field. I think you covered it, but anything else you want to add? And I understand you also want to talk about one other update. Bill Cohen, and he's a panelist and a town meeting member. And perhaps we're bringing him in as a town meeting member. Go ahead, Bill. Bill Cohen.
He muted himself again.
If you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Welcome.
Last year, a year ago, the Stevens Field Planning and Design Committee had a meeting with the Department of Marine Environmental Affairs and the community to revisit Stevens Field. In the interim, since the original passing of the article, there was the design process. It took over a year and a half. When we came to have a design around 2017, that had to go out for independent cost analysis. It came in higher than expected. We had allocated $2 million thinking that grant writing and in-kind work by the town would keep the cost of Stevens Field's project down. The town became consumed with its waterfront renovations. Stevens Field was in the midst of being used as kind of a staging area to accommodate the town's priorities at that time. So there was some delay in when we were going to build out Stevens Field. One of the biggest issues was that the costs that we were getting that were coming in were far exceeding the $4 million expected, close to $6 million. There was some concern with the community that building out Stevens Field in an area where there's an expected sea level rise might not be the greatest investment. The focus of the plan was to stay within the original spirit of the Stevens Field plan, but to stop moving back the playground and all the tennis courts and the parking away from the waterfront area. That would be the focus of this revised plan, along with adding pickleball courts. The basketball court and the baseball field will stay in their original positions. There'll be some modifications, but to control costs, the focus was to stop moving things back away from the ocean. So now we're at a point where David Gould has been actively working on the permitting process for the revised plan and with the state. He believes that those permits will be achieved by the end of this year. He begins some work on Stevens Field and take that into 2021. So the Office of Marine Environmental Affairs is actively starting to work on when this will begin the renovations to Stevens Field.
Thank you.
I had one other note I wanted to make was Article 9B. I spoke to in the special. That was $140,000 for an acquisition of a piece of land in Jenny Pond Park. After talking to the family, the Talbot family, it has been decided by the Talcott family that they are going to donate that land to the town of Plymouth and not sell it to the town of Plymouth. Richmond Talbot and Annette Talbot, husband and wife who lived on Mayflower Street, who owned this land. It was their wish to see it preserved. They passed away last year. The family's been working to resolve the estate, and they have come to a conclusion that they could fulfill their parents' wishes and see the land preserved. So we're very grateful to the Talbot family for their service to our community, both generations, and the donation of this land that will only increase the potential of Jenny Pond. And again, we thank the family for their kind contribution. So we will withdraw that article and the motions as we get towards August 10th.
Thank you. Bill Cohen is the chair of the Community Preservation Committee. I had a couple of town meeting members who came in on the V voter. I don't know if you've canceled your request, but I'm going to go back to Michael Hanlon, precinct 15. Mike, if you can join us again. I believe you had a question for us. And he's in precinct 15. This is the town meeting presentation. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, thank you. It took a few minutes for a few seconds for that little microphone to come up where I could unmute. I originally submitted my request because I wanted to ask a question about Article 9B in the special. I couldn't do it before because I couldn't see the speak button on the V voter. But Mr. Cohen answered that question, so I'm fine with that. But I do have another question about the special. I noticed, maybe I missed it, but it didn't seem like there was any presentation or any discussion whatsoever about Article 8 in the special, the $30 million for the new fire headquarters. I'm curious why we have not heard any discussion about that article, unless I missed it.
So, Michael Hanlon, tonight we have presentations that were prepared in advance. We did not have presentations on all the articles, although we have panelists who are here. And I'm going to go to Chief Edward Bradley. Chief Bradley, did you want to respond to the question from Michael Hanlon regarding Article 8 in the special town meeting? Chief Bradley.
Is there a specific question?
His question was, why was there not a presentation on Article 8? Is there anything that you'd like to present this evening to town meeting members prior to town meeting?
We didn't, no, there is not a presentation that was pre-done for that article at this time, no.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Hanlon.
The documentation for Article 8, the new fire headquarters, talks about a bunch of problems, including a groundwater stream underneath the site, number one, and groundwater contamination.
I believe we have temporarily lost connection, Mr. Hanlon, but I'm going to go to Melissa Arrighi.
I'm back.
Okay, go ahead, Michael.
I guess they muted me there. The original, in the documentation for Article 8, the new fire headquarters, they mentioned two things that I thought were curious. One was an underground stream of some sort underneath the existing fire headquarters, and some groundwater contamination, presumably caused by the former owner of the site, P&B Bus Company. So there's two parts to the question. Well, I guess one is, in my experience with hazardous waste sites, you always look to the potentially responsible parties, and that would be P&B Bus Company, to remediate that groundwater contamination. Has that ever been done? Number one. And number two, the new proposed site on Long Pond Road, which used to be a DPW garage, presumably with the same kinds of underground storage tanks. Do we know if there's any groundwater contamination there or any underground streams that would make it difficult to construct?
With respect to the first question, I'm just going to ask that we not get too far away from the town meeting warrant. We're not really talking about the other site. So unless there's a quick answer, I'd like to focus on what's contained within the warrant. Melissa Arrighi, are you prepared to respond?
Yes, so two things. I think Ed can talk pretty significantly about the history of the existing site, but we are much too late in the process to go after the former owners for any kind of hazardous material under the site. And Ed can give you the history on that. It's just been an extended amount of time that we've owned that. In addition, I'll touch briefly on the Long Pond Road site. In terms of that, we've done an initial 21E on the site. You remember we went to sell that. So that was one of the requirements we did before we put it on the market.
Thank you.
And it was clean. There was no contamination?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I think we had to do some initial cleanup there, as I remember now looking back, but we put that 21E information, I think that's all available online because we had to reveal all that when we went out for, I think we've gone out to bid 3 times on that site.
Thank you. Chief Edward Bradley, anything further to add, responding?
On the original site, Chapter 21E says that the owner of record becomes the party responsible for the cleanup. The town has owned the property now since 1977. There were a number of underground fuel tanks that were heavy oil, was number 6, like the bunker oil that they used to heat the building. And when they were taken out of the ground, many of them had large holes and they had rotted away. And that's the contamination that we're seeing now is years of that number 6 heavy oil being broken down in the water and in the soil and leaching out through the groundwater that runs through the property. They did find when they were doing the construction on the site, they did find that there was a man-made kind of like a culvert that directed the water through the property and around the original building that was on site. And it was probably put in the 1930s or so. And it was not on any plans because they didn't have anything that went back that far. And when the original construction company ran into that, there was no extra money in the budget to address that problem. And it was the water was just bypassed what they thought was going to be all right, but it continues to flow through the building up into the cellar and into the basement. It was causing quite a mold problem. But now on top of that, it started to disturb the oil that's trapped in the ground, and that's causing contamination to leach off of our property onto neighboring properties and down into Stevensfield.
Thank you. Michael Hanlon, that answers your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to continue. I had a couple of people requesting to speak. Not sure if you canceled. I'll inquire at this time. Ron Riley, Precinct 11, followed by Christopher Houle, Precinct 14. Ron Riley, did you have a question that you wish to ask at the presentation tonight?
15.
Ron Riley is Precinct 11.
No, 11.
And this is the town.
Can you hear me now, Steve?
Yes, Ron. Good evening.
Thank you. I did cancel that, but while I have you, I'm just curious, Article 9 that we were just speaking of that we went by and there was no presentation on, the first couple parts of that show repairs to the fire and police, various buildings for the roofs. But then I think it was Article 3 that we're asking, going back, was it 500,000 to look through the buildings and decide what, but then 3 million to repair them? Like, why is this in 2 separate areas?
I believe it was in 5 and 6. I'll go back for the earlier video. Chief Ed Bradley, do you care to respond?
Yes, the DPW has some articles in there to continue replacing roofs. Right now, currently, the one in West Plymouth is being replaced, and that exhausted all of the operation funds from last fiscal year, so they cannot continue on to the Management Station, which also needs a complete roof replacement, and then again to Bourne Road. And I do know that there's a leak at the police station that they have to address. Then bringing the consultants in, we're looking at the buildings as a whole, such as West Plymouth. The bones of that building, the outside structure is in good shape now that we get the roof on, we can stop the water from coming in. But the living areas are a mess. You wouldn't want yourself or one of your family to stay in one of those stations just because of the condition they're in. And they need a complete overhaul. And they need to have someone go in and tell us where they're going to start, what's going to make the most sense, and then they've got to come up to code at the same time. That's one of the issues they haven't putting the roof on at West Plymouth right now. It gets very expensive due to the amount of damage from the leak over the years, and now having to bring it up to the current code.
Thank you. That was Chief Bradley responding to Ron Riley. I guess the cancel speaker request is working, and that may have been the case for Christopher Houle. Christopher Houle is Precinct 14. We're just trying to test out all of our applications. Christopher, did you wish to speak and then cancel your request?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Good evening.
Yes, I would like to speak.
Go ahead.
Thank you. First, this is in regard to Mr. Cohen's presentation. And first, I just want to thank him for all the great work he does for community preservation in Plymouth. But my question is in regard to articles or motion 16E and 16F. Kind of in regards to optics. How has the Community Preservation Committee really factored in COVID-19 into the plans and thoughts for promoting the construction of these parks and activity fields in light of COVID-19? It just doesn't quite feel like the right time.
Bill Cohan, could you respond to a question from Christopher Houle, Precinct 14? Bill. Bill Cohan is the chair of the Community Preservation Committee.
Okay, here I am.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, Chris, that's a very good question. And the committee did have a chance to discuss that. And the feeling was that by delaying these endeavors, the cost is going to go up. And we know that we're going to build out Stevens Field. We've been slowly putting money aside for that over the last number of years. So we're prepared to do it. We're seeking the permits. Those permits expire at a certain point, so they're difficult to achieve. And then you have a window to do the work. If we were to delay something like Stevens Field, we would find ourselves in a condition where the cost would only be going up. The money's there, it's been allocated. We're not raising and appropriating. We're not putting any added stress in that capacity. And the other thing we have to recognize is during these difficult times, public spaces were under a great deal of use. People wanted to get out, get fresh air, go for a walk, where they could socially distance safely. So we found that a lot of the conservation land that we had out there around the town of Plymouth was seeing quite a bit of traffic. And so the public spaces we felt were important. Some of the other decisions the committee did make to withdraw some articles or reconsider other articles for a future time. We definitely have done that so far, and we're going to continue to do that as the town kind of manages through this difficult crisis.
Thank you. That's Bill Cohan, chair of the Community Preservation Committee. We're going to go to Richard Cirque, Precinct 2.
Yes.
Richard.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. This was a question on Articles 16C, 16E, and 16F. With the expansion of the Community Preservation Act to authorize expenditures for recreational purposes, the caucus of precincts 1 and 2 had a question as to whether any thought had been given to funding these projects with contributions from the park department.
Bill Cohen, could you respond?
Mr. Cirque, could you clarify that again? So what article are you speaking to specifically?
16C, 16E, and 16F. All articles for recreational expenditures under the CPA. And the caucus of precincts 1 and 2 raised a question as to whether or not any thought had been given to seeking contributions from the park department to fund these expenditures as opposed to funding them solely through the CPA.
Well, I did, we are on 16C, which is Stevens Field, which I spoke to just briefly. We are looking at a self-help grant because there is a strategy over the period of time to raise more money outside of the Community Preservation Act to pay down that borrowing. So we are looking at a self-help grant to help with Stevens Field to add to the town's match. The Department of Public Works has indicated that they are going to be working with David Gould to some in-kind activities, keeping costs down. So the town is working internally to control costs at Stevens Field, and we're looking at a grant. When it comes to the article pertaining to the ADA compliance, this is an opportunity for the Community Preservation Committee to help out the town in a situation where they're facing kind of a crisis where a number of parks in Plymouth have been identified not to be ADA compliant. And so we felt it was important at last year's town meeting and this town meeting to help the town deal with this cost that has been put upon it by the state. And if we don't address these sooner rather than later, the town could be fined. We have been in conversations with the town to look at other parks that need to become compliant and how we can work together to find other funding sources. But the committee did feel that we needed to get a jump start on where the town is and getting playgrounds compliant. I think your last one was E, was it? F?
E.
Was there any conversation? Did you have a question on F?
No, I wasn't questioning the worthiness of the expenditure. I just was relaying a question from our caucus as to whether funding from the park department had been sought or was considered appropriate.
Yes, I have been in conversations with the Department of Marine Environmental Affairs about a possible self-help grant. And the department, JB has indicated to the Department of Marine Environmental Affairs that they will do what they can to help by doing in-kind work at the site to control costs. So the town is putting something on the table right now at Stevensfield, and we are looking at other options down the road for the other ADA compliant issues in parks in Plymouth.
Thank you very much for all the good work you do.
Lynn Barrett, she's the Director of Finance. Lynn, welcome back.
Thanks. I just wanted to help Bill out answering Richard's question regarding 16E and 16F. CPA committee does like to have a match from the town to put towards a project. So for the ADA accessibility project, the town is funding $25,000 towards that project from free cash. And then 16F, the pickleball fields, out of a $170,000 project, we are recommending $50,000 to come from the recreation revolving account. So I just wanted to add that to his answer.
Thank you. Lynn Barrett, Director of Finance. We're going to continue with the annual town meeting agenda, Article 19 on a zoning floodplain. We don't have a presentation. We do, however, have a presentation, Article 21 on the stretch code, and we welcome Holly States, who has prepared a presentation with respect to the stretch code. And we're going to now go to the video and watch and listen to Holly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Holly States, and I am representing the Plymouth Energy Committee. We are sponsoring Article 21 on the town meeting warrant because your approval of the Stretch Energy Code will enable Plymouth to become a green community, and it will bring significant benefits to the town. As some of you may know, Massachusetts is a leader in energy efficiency, and it has been a leader for the past 9 years, ranked #1 in the country. One of the reasons for this ranking is the policies and programs that it has put in place since 2008 with the Global Warming Solutions Act. One of those programs is the Green Communities Designation and Grant Program. This program has awarded more than $123 million in grants to qualified communities across the Commonwealth. And these cities and towns are collectively saving more than $17 million in reduced energy costs every year. They are also significantly reducing their carbon footprint. This map shows the 271 cities and towns that have achieved Green Communities designation. They represent more than 3/4 of the communities in the Commonwealth. Plymouth is not one of these towns, but with your help, we can make it become one. The Green Communities Designation and Grant Program has awarded grants to many of our neighbors, including Kingston, as you can see on this chart, which has earned over $1.1 million in grant funds since its inception in 2010. If Plymouth becomes a green community, we will receive an initial grant of approximately $267,000, and then we will become eligible to apply for additional grant funding to help fund energy reduction projects. This program is not funded by tax dollars, but through something called the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is paid by electric utilities. Communities become green communities by achieving 5 criteria, and Plymouth has already achieved 3 of these, as you can see from the red check marks. It has already adopted as-of-right siting for renewable energy or alternative energy generation, research and development, or manufacturing in designated areas, and it has adopted expedited permitting for these facilities. It has also already adopted a fuel-efficient vehicle purchasing policy. We still need to create an energy reduction plan, criterion number 3, to reduce energy use by 20% over 5 years. But we have a grant in place from the Old Colony Planning Council to help us do that, and the state will provide an energy assessment for free. The focus of Article 21 is Criterion 5, minimizing life cycle cost. This criterion requires new construction to minimize to the extent possible the life cycle cost of a building. And the way to do this is to adopt the Stretch Energy Code. The Stretch Energy Code is an appendix to the Massachusetts Building Code. The building code is intended to protect public health and safety and ensure building resilience. It sets minimum standards for building construction, including energy efficiency for such things as insulation, windows, and heating and cooling. The Stretch Code is an optional appendix. It sets slightly higher minimum standards, and it applies only to new construction, new residential construction, and new commercial construction that is over 100,000 square feet or 40,000 square feet for buildings that are air conditioned and heated. Please note, additions, renovations, and repairs are exempt from the Stretch Code. There are a lot of misconceptions about the Stretch Code. One is that it's new and experimental, which it is not. It does not require tight, unhealthy homes. Homes with oil heat can meet the Stretch Code, and residents will not be required to update their existing homes. As noted earlier, the Stretch Code applies only to new construction. It explicitly exempts additions, renovations, and repairs. The Stretch Code is slightly different from the base code in that the base code uses a prescriptive path, like a checklist of compliance measures for individual design elements. The Stretch Code emphasizes energy performance. The Stretch Code removes the prescriptive path or the checklist and actually requires an energy model to show the performance of a building. And this is a big advantage to the building owner because it shows that an assurance that energy efficiency will be built into the building. The model actually tests it and shows and requires that it the proof. The benefits to Plymouth to become a green community are great, but we have to pass the Stretch Energy Code in order to move forward with this initiative. We will not only receive the initial designation grant, but we will be eligible to apply for additional grant funds. We will cut our municipal energy costs, which will free up money for other uses. Some of our deferred maintenance projects that save energy can be funded through the program. We will reduce our town's greenhouse gas emissions and will promote energy efficient and resilient building construction. The bottom line is that this initiative will save the town money and energy. We need your help in order to make this happen. Please support Article 21 and approve the Stretch Energy Code. Thank you.
Thank you to Holly States. We're now going to go to Betsy Hall, Precinct 12, with a question. Welcome back again, Betsy.
Thank you, Steve. I was on the Energy Committee when the Stretch Code was brought forward. Can you hear me, Steve?
We can continue.
When the Stretch Code was brought forward a few years back, one of the big questions that came up on that at that time, Holly, was wind turbines. One of the green community requirements, possible requirements, was to allow the siting of wind turbines. I know that Plymouth now does not have a wind turbine bylaw. Can you speak to wind turbines and this Stretch Energy Code, please?
Holly States is one of our panelists. Holly, can you respond to Betsy Hall, Precinct 12?
Yeah, so the Stretch Energy Code doesn't require that you have wind turbines. It does require, or it's not the Stretch Energy Code, it's the other part of the Green Communities Act, but it does require that you make allowances, you set up designated areas for renewable energy or alternative energy facilities, research and development, or manufacturing. And we've done that for solar panels. I believe I looked at the bylaws earlier today. This was something that was passed by town meeting several years ago. But if there are wind turbines, it's only in designated areas. It has to meet certain criteria. So I'm not sure about that, and I can look into that further. But I know we do have the solar panels are in designated areas. It's not like anywhere in town. It can't go anywhere in town. And that's why there is, it's called as of right siting, because it has to meet all the criteria that the town has put in place in the bylaws.
Thank you to
At
Holly.
this time, there is no wind turbine bylaw, as far as I know.
I think there is. I looked at it today.
Yeah, actually, there's no updated one. There's a very old one. Energy Committee was going to update it, which they never did. So could you get an answer for me about as of right wind turbine siting in the town, please?
Yeah. Yes.
I 100% support this, but I'm very concerned about people being forced to have wind turbines near their homes.
Thank you, Betsy Hall, Precinct 12. Holly States from the Energy Committee. We're going to continue now and go to Michael Withington, Precinct 5. Welcome back, Michael. This is the town meeting presentation. It's coming to you live on Monday, August 3rd. We're entering our 4th hour. Michael?
Sorry to keep everybody, just Holly, quick question in favor of this, but just what's the expected cost, additional cost to someone who's doing a new construction on a home? Is there a higher cost, lower cost? Is it cost neutral? What would be expected, not factoring just factoring the straight cost, not the energy saving?
Holly?
There is an additional cost for the home energy rater or HERS rater. The building, the builder pays for it, and there are utility rebates available for the builder. And the Department of Energy Resources Green Communities Division has on its website a couple of scenarios, actual examples of homes that have been built in the last couple of years. One of them in particular is from a 2,500 square foot home in Worcester. And it shows that the HERS rater was about $2,600. The utilities rebates were about $1,600. So the cost compared to the base code was $1,000 approximately. But the reduced energy cost in the first year offset that, and the cash flow is positive in the years to come. So because of the additional energy savings, it really pays for itself pretty quickly. And the other thing I would say is that the stretch code allows the builder actually more flexibility. With the base code, you have a checklist that you have to comply with each design element, but the stretch code takes a look at the whole building, takes a whole building approach. So builders can sort of juggle different things and say, well, you know, I might have more insulation here, so I might be able to do something different on the windows. It has to reach a particular score. And so the builders actually have more flexibility.
Thank you, Holly States and Michael Withington.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you. We don't have any other people requesting to be a speaker. We're going to move on to the next article, which is Article 24. It is a transfer to the Conservation Commission, and we welcome Dory Stoley. She is from the Open Space Committee, and we have her presentation.
Hello, I'm Dory Stoley, Vice Chair of the Open Space Committee, with a 3-minute presentation on Article 24. One of the responsibilities of the Open Space Committee is to review land parcels that have been forfeited to the town due to non-payment of taxes. These are referred to as tax title properties, and there are hundreds of them, including the 8.45-acre Peter Road property in yellow, which is located in West Plymouth near the Carver Line, and which we recommend be transferred to the care and custody of the Conservation Commission. Please note the 3 green polygons. In prior town meetings, these former tax title properties totaling 22 acres were voted to be transferred to the Conservation Commission. The Peter Road parcel abuts one of these properties. Of special note is that all of these areas were originally designated as open space by the developer Ravenbrook Realty in its plans for the David Estates development. The Open Space Committee assesses promising tax title properties throughout Plymouth using standardized assessment criteria, ensuring we examine critical factors affecting the quality and utility of each parcel. For instance, we look at aquifer and surface water protection, potential for human recreation, occurrence of rare plants and animals, and climate change resiliency, to name a few. The Peter Road parcel is recommended for protection for 4 main reasons. 1. It was originally designated as open space. 2. This forested parcel has great value for climate change resiliency, acting to cool the area, thus countering the heat island effect of buildings, parking lots, and roads. It also sequesters carbon. 3. Because it is adjacent to one protected open space parcel and near 2 others, its value for wildlife is greater because animals are able to move between protected areas. 4. It provides neighborhood open space for people to enjoy, supporting the committee's goal of providing natural open space throughout Plymouth so that all residents have open space close to their homes. COVID-19 has shown us how important this is for physical exercise and mental health. Based on these factors, the Open Space Committee considers this property an excellent candidate for town open space. At the first virtual meeting of the West Plymouth Steering Committee, to which abutting property owners were invited, 5 individuals spoke in favor of the article and no one spoke against it. The Select Board, Advisory and Finance Committee, and Conservation Commission all support Article 24. We urge you to vote yes for Article 24. Thank you.
Thank you, Dory Stoley. And now we have a question, Dory, from Wynn Gerhard. She is Precinct 13. Her question is, she'd like more information on the trails and waterfront access. She couldn't tell from the map, and she's also requesting specific information about public access to the trails and the waterfront. It seemed from the map that the parcels are next to other private property, so how would the public get access, Dory? Unmute yourself, Dory. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
The parcel is adjacent to another parcel that has access from Peter Road. So there's it abuts Peter Road, so people can walk in from the road. At the bottom of the map shows Fresh Meadow Pond, and that's the water body that it's adjacent to. And so we considered that people from the neighborhood would basically just walk in or perhaps ride over on their bikes. It also abuts a little corner juts into Bunny's Road on the west side, and across Bunny's Road on the other side is Carver. So there's a couple potential access spots, but it was not the thought of the committee that this would be sort of billed as a place for people to drive into, to park and explore. And there's not really much parking there. It's more for neighborhood space. And in terms of trails, I spoke with our member, open space member, Malcolm McGregor, who's our trails expert and quite knowledgeable. And he described how it could be a link in the chain from the Bay Circuit Trail to the north and down to Miles Standish in the south. Now, there are some other intervening parcels where you would need to be acquired or permission granted. But if you include some road walking, then this trail could help hook up to those other trails. And but to get through the parcel, the Peter Road parcel, there is a trail. The 2 non-adjacent properties don't have trails on them, and I haven't explored them myself, but that's what Malcolm said. So Wynn, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Dory. And at this time, in addition, we're going to go to Edward Geller, Precinct 6. Edward Geller asked to be a speaker, and so we're going to go to Mr. Geller. We're continuing to review the annual town meeting warrant. And Mr. Geller, go ahead.
Yes. My question is, the original property designation was to be open space. Has something changed at that location?
Dory Stoley?
No, what has changed is that, so they set it aside as open space, but either the builders or there was supposed to be a homeowners association that would pay the taxes on it. So the taxes were not paid on it. So it was forfeited to the town of Plymouth. And so it's being held as tax title property.
And this would be a way of reverting it back to protected open space, as was the original intention.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And moving on, the annual town meeting, Articles 25 through 29, we have no motion, no action. A number of announcements as we close out this presentation. First, we had great success this evening with the V-Voter, a few glitches in the beginning, but as you can see towards the end, we're getting the requests to speak. And also we're getting cancel requests in a few cases where people wanted to speak and then went off. Keep in mind next week it'll be important to use the V-Voter also to close debate. That's something, of course, we didn't do this evening, but it's one of your applications that you can follow. Tonight's presentation will be on tape. You'll be able to watch it again and refer to it. Tomorrow, on Tuesday, August 4th, you'll receive another email with further invitation and instructions. If you don't receive it by noon, you can begin to check with the assistant moderator regarding that. The presentation by Lynn Barrett has been redone by PACTV. You'll also be getting that by email, and you'll have a chance to watch that. Now, as we close out this meeting, we're going to immediately be focusing on the motions book for our virtual town meeting. We're going to be looking at all of the main motions as well as any motions to amend. I've received a few, and if you have a motion that you wish to make, I'm requesting that you forward them tomorrow, and after tomorrow evening, if there are any additional ones, we'd like as many as possible by Wednesday at the latest. We have a final motions meeting on Thursday. As you heard from Lynn Barrett, the Director of Finance, some of these are living documents. We're trying to keep them up to date and deliver the information completely to town meeting members. Finally, tomorrow evening, we'll be taking a survey of town meeting members regarding whether to have a virtual town meeting. It will, again, will not be a binding vote, but it will give us a sense of town meeting members' feelings at this point as we move towards next week's town meeting. And next Monday, we'll begin promptly at 6. We'll talk more tomorrow night about opening up earlier in the day for you to log in and set yourself up. And we will be taking a break. It's required under our charter. I'm proposing a 5-minute recess at or about 8 p.m. If anybody has concerns about that, let me know. Tonight, because it was not an official town meeting, we went straight through nearly 3.5 hours. I want to thank you all for your attention, for your patience, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow night as we move forward next with a town meeting preview of the motions for the annual and special town meeting that'll come to you live next Monday, August 10th at 6 p.m. And this meeting is adjourned.